Call to order the City Commission meeting of the City of St. Pete Beach. Today is Tuesday, June 24th, 2025, and it is 6 p.m. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
City Clerk, if you please do a roll call.
Commissioner Robinson.
Here.
Commissioner Resignation.
Here.
Commissioner Mulholland.
Here.
Vice Mayor Marriott.
Here.
And Mayor Petrulla.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, City Clerk. All right, the first item on the list this evening is we have Commissioner Joe Mulholland, who announced his resignation. We open it up for a period of several weeks for candidates to submit an application and to also collect their signatures and endorsements from residents. And so the first thing this evening we're going to do is interview the three applicants. And so before we get started with that, I think, City Commission, I think we should just kind of go over the process very briefly. And then we'll proceed with the interviews. City Clerk, if you don't mind me asking, can you tell us the sequence in which the applicants were received? Who was first, who was second, who was last?
Yes. John Maldonado was first, Bob Shiros was second, and Mike Greiger was third.
Okay. Thank you. So as we discussed previously, I think the process that we agreed on is that we were going to interview the three applicants. I suggest we just interview in a sequence that they put their applications in, first one in, first one in. The City Clerk provided us with a list of sample questions, or if you have your own questions, I think this is just a suggestion, I think we should probably ask, each of us should ask all three applicants the same question so that we kind of get a sense from them. And then after we finish the interviews, we'll have a discussion about, how we feel about the applicants, who we feel is most qualified, and kind of go from there. I know we had a conversation about this briefly last time, Commissioner Mulholland, and I do not want to put you on the spot, but I will anyway.
Okay.
It's my last chance. You sure you don't want to leave? No. I think one of the things that we could do is once we've had the interviews and then we've deliberated between the five of us, one of the options is, for example, for the commissioner who is resigning to resign effective immediately on the spot, and then we can make the decision, make the appointment tonight, so we don't have to have another meeting tomorrow evening. I'm not sure what purpose it would serve. We have a very light agenda. We have one action item tonight. I'm not sure it serves us any purpose to come back one more night if we're doing all the deliberation tonight the way that we had said that we were going to do anyway. But that's really, the first person that has to say yes would have to be Commissioner Mulholland. It could also be at the end of the meeting, and then we take that action step at the end of the meeting as well. It doesn't have to be immediately after the interviews. It's up to you, sir, or we can do it tomorrow.
No, I mean, it is a light agenda. Quite honestly, there's nothing on the agenda that I'm, particularly have my hair on the back up about or anything. So if that makes it easier and better for everybody to, get it resolved tonight rather than having to come back tomorrow night, I'm perfectly fine with that. I think, as I understood it, I would sit for questioning, and then either at the beginning or the end of the meeting, I would make my resignation effective at that point. and then the remaining commission would make the decision. Is
Mhm.
that correct? Yeah, I don't see the point. We've had plenty of meetings over the last several months, so I don't see the point in, asking the public or the commission to come back tomorrow to make this decision. So I would be perfectly willing to, after the interviews are complete, at that point, assuming I'm allowed to make a very brief statement,
Of course.
resign at that point to allow you folks to decide what the path forward is. I will say this, I may sit in the audience and watch,
We couldn't.
only because I'm still a resident, I still own a home here. I would like to see what the path forward is for the city. I'm not going to try to influence that. I don't think that's necessarily my place at this juncture. But I still have an interest in what's going to happen to this commission and what's going to happen to this city moving forward, because I still care about both entities. So after the interviews are complete, I am willing to amend my resignation to be effective whatever time that happens to be. And I will step down at that point and probably go to the back of the room and just observe as a resident.
Commissioners, thoughts, comments?
Are there any noticing issues with, where we had said that there was going to be a meeting tomorrow night to appoint a commissioner? Are there any noticing problems with changing that up at this juncture?
Well, you first have to amend the agenda to add the item. Under sunshine law, you can amend an existing item. I think in the analysis of this particular item, we sought applicants, and the application period is closed, so we can't get any more applicants. We would have to take public comment on the item before you approve and take a final action on the District 4 appointment. But you're going to have to add it to the agenda and then take public comment and deliberate, and I think you'd be fine. One thing that might be weighing on you too is that, well, maybe someone didn't come today thinking they would come tomorrow. But the interviews were all today, and we can take public comment today. It's at your discretion.
Okay.
I'm good with going forward today and doing the noticing and doing what we have to do to go ahead and get it all in today. It is a light agenda. We've been here much later. We get to go home relatively early.
Well, we're not adding anything today. That the only thing we're going to do,
Right.
were going to do tomorrow is the actual vote.
Right.
So it should have been a 5-minute meeting. So if you want to come back tomorrow for 5 minutes, that's fine. I'm just saying there doesn't seem to necessarily be a need for it. So we just need consensus on this, whether y'all want to do that or not. So please let us know.
I'm only concerned, I think the same, thinking about what Commissioner Marriott is saying. If someone, or even as the attorney was mentioning, if someone wasn't coming today but knew that we were going to be deliberating tomorrow,
That was never on the schedule. Tomorrow was the vote. If you look at the agenda for tomorrow,
but
it's
would
the
they
vote.
be able to give public comment tomorrow?
Not sure how that meeting is structured for tomorrow. We can look it up in a second.
Because you had a business item on the agenda, they
Mhm.
would have been able to make comment at that business item, just
Sure.
not a general comment at the beginning of the meeting.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. Again, I just want to make sure that we understand what the only thing that's happening tomorrow is the vote. So we show up, audience comments, and there's a vote. All the deliberation, we're doing that tonight. I mean, that's the way we had structured it.
Yeah, I'm not dying to come back tomorrow. I would hope that anybody who wanted to comment came tonight. And I'm sure if they didn't, we'll hear about it. I can't remember why we set it up the way we did in the first place and not the way but that's irrelevant now because it's in the past.
Okay.
I think we had it originally, Mr. Mulholland was resigning as of 11:59 PM tonight.
Oh.
So he would have to resign earlier. That would create the vacancy, and then you can fill it.
That's fine.
Okay.
It's for me.
All right, so besides that, are there any other amendments to the agenda?
I'd like to add an item for discussion. What do I want to call it? I guess perhaps to discuss the possibility of a standing ordinance that would be post-storms that would deal with some of the things we've been dealing with. I know that's not very specific, but I don't want to
Call it storm
don't want to
ordinance.
get into it a lot right now, so.
Okay, any other changes? Okay, so I'll make a motion to amend the agenda to include after the interviews, public comments for this, after the interviews for District 4 Commissioner, to include public comments, and then vote for appointment, and an item for discussion for Commissioner Marriott on storm ordinances.
I second.
City Clerk, if you please do a roll call.
Vice Mayor Marriott,
Yes.
Commissioner Robinson,
Yes.
Commissioner Resignation,
Yes.
Commissioner Mulholland,
Yes.
and Mayor Petrillo.
Yes. Forgive me. City Clerk, if we wanted to make an amendment to the amended agenda, is it too late?
No, it's your discretion.
The reason I'm asking is because we have hurricane recovery and post-storm reports from staff, and so I anticipate that the interview process is going to take a little bit of time. And so if we could move those two items first and allow the staff to make those presentations so they don't have to stick around for, it's their evening and as well. So City Manager, any objections to that?
No, maybe make an amendment to your amendment is go ahead and move consent calendar before interviews as well.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to amend the agenda to move the District 4 Commission appointed interviews to be item 5, to be after the consent agenda. So the first item will be hurricane recovery, then post-storm reviews, then audience comments, then the consent agenda, then the District 4 Commission appointee interviews.
Second.
City Clerk, if you'll please do a roll call.
Commissioner Robinson,
Yes.
Commissioner Resignation,
Yes.
Commissioner Mulholland,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Marriott,
Yes.
Mayor Petrillo.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. All right, so first we have hurricane recovery insurance update. Good evening, Camden.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners, Charter officials. For the record, my name is Camden Mills, Public Services Director. I appreciate the opportunity this evening to give you guys a brief update on where we're at through our hurricane recovery, dealing with our different insurance agencies. So first here, this slide is showing our general liability coverage through Public Risk Management in McLaren's. How they've kind of presented the information that we've received to date is the replacement cost value is currently what they estimate the damages to be. The actual cash value is what they've paid us to date, and then the recoverable depreciation is the amount that we would be reimbursed once we complete the repair and submit invoices. So for Hurricane Helene, they've identified about $3.1 million worth of damages. and for Hurricane Milton, just over $300,000. And these figures do reflect after our deductibles have been applied. This slide here shows just a breakdown of that PRM policy specific to our different facilities. So as you can see, they've identified about $2.1 million in replacement cost value for our various city facilities. This next slide here is just a summary on our various parks. So you can see the actual cash value of just over $10,000 is what we received to date. And then the total replacement cost that they've identified so far to date is just over $14,000. And then this next slide is just miscellaneous other infrastructure that they've identified as damaged. So we have some seawalls, around $200,000, and then our various lift stations, just over $1 million. This next slide here is specific to our flood insurance policy, and this is related to content damages that were damaged from the flooding. The format of this information was a little bit different. World Risk Management combined both storms together, and as they are evaluating, they're paying checks for this amount. So this is what we've received from flood insurance to date, just over $1.1 million. And then this next slide is more of a summary, combining both of those insurance policies. You can see on the column 2 here, titled Construction. These are the values of construction repair work that has been approved to date for our various facilities. So that's the building repairs, interior and exterior, as well as our roof replacements, elevators work, and some HVAC and electrical work. Total approved today is around $5 million. We did have some budgeted funds in our CIP specific to the public services building at $450,000. And then you can see the valuation that we've received to date from insurance at $3.3 million. On the far right-hand side shows the difference. So that's kind of the delta that we're trying to get smaller and smaller as we continue to negotiate with our insurance. So right now, you know, we've have $5 million worth of repair, and insurance has identified $3.3 million of that. So we're working on getting that difference down. It is important to note that the valuations from insurance do not include the HVAC repairs, which is just over $100,000, and the elevators, which is just over $600,000. So that $1.2 million already is closer to about $500,000. That's kind of the delta that we're looking at right now. Some important items to consider as we're evaluating these numbers. Majority of the differences in the cost estimates between insurance and our contractor, Cotton, is relative to the roof replacements, the HVAC, and the elevators. As I mentioned previously, the HVAC and the elevators aren't included in the insurance estimate. The reasoning for that is those are reimbursable based on invoices. So as we get invoices and pay those, insurance pays that exact amount. Regarding the roofs, we have clarified with the insurance, and they agree to the same amount of scope. So in the areas that we're proposing full replacement rather than partial repairs, the insurance does agree with that. So right now we're just clarifying the pricing of what those materials cost. As of last week, insurance had their engineers on site meeting with our contractor to try and clarify those pricing discrepancies. As I mentioned, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing items will be reimbursed on an invoice basis, so that'll cover the elevators and HVAC. These valuations are ongoing, so this isn't the end amount. We'll continue to try to get insurance to cover as much as we can. And then it's important to note also, as we're going through some of these repairs, especially as it's related to the building and the roofs, we are implementing some mitigation techniques to build back better. So we can't expect, we're not doing exact like-for-like replacement, so we can't expect there to be some cost above what a like-for-like replacement to be. But in total, this is currently where we stand with insurance. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions.
Thank you, Camden. I know one of the questions I've gotten several times from residents is, when is the rec center coming back?
We don't have an exact schedule on that right now. The contracts have been executed, the contractor's been given the go-ahead, and they've started to order materials. What we've heard is about 2 to 4 weeks, we can expect to receive those materials, and then we'll formalize the contractor schedule. So as soon as we receive that from Cotton, we'll share that information so we can get that out to the public.
Thank you.
Camden, do you have a feel on any of these repairs, or where the city is coming out on things that maybe were close to nearing the end of their life, where they were going to have to be replaced or refurbished or fixed, where even though that seems like, big, still a pretty big delta of work that has to be done that we haven't been reimbursed for yet, but do you have any kind of feeling for what % of that might be, maintenance that now won't have to be done over the next, 2 to 5 years? Is there a,
Yeah, there's a good chunk of that related to the public service building. That was a project that was already in our capital plan, so that'll help, push maintenance, for that down the road. The rec center, really the roofs is going to be the biggest thing. Those roof replacements is really going to extend the useful life and help out for any maintenance that we would need down the road. Does that help answer?
Yeah, no, it does. There's a little tiny bit of a silver lining from the from what happened. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item is the post-storm review emergency operations plan. Good evening, Chief.
Good evening. Jim Kilpatrick, Fire Chief. Tonight I want to give you a little bit of an overview of what we've done with the review of the emergency operations plan. We started with feedback, and we did this on many levels. We started with the Community Recovery Task Force, was one of the point of contacts we had for the community. With staff, we had department level meetings, as well as director level meetings, individual meetings to provide feedback, to conduct our SWOT analysis. We also met with our partners in emergency management from FDIM, the county, our municipal partners, Treasure Island, Madeira Beach, Gulfport, and we've also gathered some lessons learned going through that experience. Here are some of the issues that were identified. Staffing gaps is probably one of the biggest ones that we've addressed. Employee support, communication, and of course the after action, which is all part of this right now. Actions taken. We've conducted multiple trainings at this point, and we're going to continue to do so with EOC personnel attending training prior to storm season. We did a tabletop with the directors. We've met with FDIM. We've also conducted position-appropriate ICS training, ICS 300, ICS 400, and others. We're going to continue conducting training throughout the year with multiple reminders throughout the year. We've been more specific with our position assignments with the ICS 203 form, which is basically a roster of positions, identifying people to go into those seats, not just an org chart, as well as position checklist to assist. We've sent staff to county training to address the resource management, meeting with county partners. Prior to the storm, we've also addressed pre-storm contracting for food, debris management, and EOC locations. As you're aware, we have secondary and tertiary EOC locations that we contract with every year. In addition, we've also planned on having a more clear objectives in the incident action plan that we issue daily while in the EOC, giving clear objectives to the staff that they can accomplish during their workday. We've created an employee support position in the org chart, as well as in the ICS 203 form. And we've pre-made templates partnering with our county partners for social media messaging to make a more clear messaging as far as evacuations and resources. We've sent staff to logistics and resource training with the county, with additional staff scheduled to go in the near future. Updates to the SIMP plan. We've added additional support positions, logistics coordinator to help with resources. We've also added, as I mentioned, the employee support position, and as well as we've also increased our bench depth with additional positions in the fire department with the captains that can help with our span of control and some of the management of this scene when we get into an incident similar to Helene and Milton. We've also clarified our pay policy for emergency pay so that there's no misunderstanding when storm season is upon us and we have to deploy personnel. We've adjusted our secondary and tertiary EOC maps and plans. You may not be aware, but during our Helene deployment, once the roof was ripped off the baseball field downtown St. Pete, we received 150 National Guardsmen, so that kind of put a stress on us, and so we've made that more clear as far as who's allowed in the EOC, where they go when they're in the EOC, with our partner St. Pete College. We instituted an AB shift to help with the structure of our deployment so that people aren't overworked and that we're clear as when you start and stop work and what your jobs are. We've also written and developed SOPs and checklists to facilitate role transition from blue sky jobs to gray sky jobs. And that includes, we're going to be working on those SOPs for you as well as the commission. So, any questions?
Commissioner?
So, Chief, and I guess also city manager, or probably more so city manager, one of the most frustrating things for me during the storms was I had many people reaching out to me for information, and how I was getting information wasn't particularly clean, and based on the lens of my background, I'm more on the decision maker executive side than the legislator side, but I think in many ways it would have been productive had I, because I was here, had I been able to attend the briefings at EOC, and maybe I could have, but I never got an invite. And I understand that it's a situation where if the commission goes to EOC briefings, they should be there. I don't want to say as a guest. That's not. I'm not putting it right, but you know, they need to keep their mouths shut and basically listen to what's going on. And then if they have an issue, they take it up with the city manager after the meeting or whatever. But there was a lot going on here that you and to a greater degree the city manager was answering text messages and this or that. But I just think that if we ever have that type of situation again, and we have commissioners that are actually here and present, that they be able to potentially attend those meetings, and they may be able to be more productive in answering questions for the immediate residents that, you know, have a multitude of questions. So I only thought of that as you was making your presentation, but I thought it was worth making a comment about it. So it's, you know, I know you don't want people there standing over you, telling you how to do your job. I get that. But oftentimes, we're the first people the residents come to, and if we're here, it's almost a waste of assets for us not to be able to attend those meetings to get a sense. But I just wanted to throw that out there.
So that complicates things a lot. So the ICS structure, does really doesn't provide for any elected officials to be in that chain of command situation. And the complicated part is, if one of you are allowed to attend, technically all of you should be allowed to attend, and now you're putting me in a noticing situation, which only adds another layer of bureaucracy for me to try to keep the operation moving. What I can offer you is that my job is, as running that EOC, is to be your conduit for information, and if you're not getting enough information, that's where I'm now increasing the team's time reporting back to me to say, instead of a situational report every 4 hours, I want one every hour for the next 8-hour shift. So that's how I start to change that flow of information. Also, with you on the ground, this is why we want to do a little bit of training with you, and we've given you some extra authority to get back into the island this year, because I couldn't get you back on the island for a couple days, so that did complicate things. You were already here, but some had evacuated. Is that if you're here or you can get back, now you're boots on the ground for me, so you're feeding me information from your district and your neighborhoods that I can utilize, and that's really helpful. We were missing that this last storm season because most people were not here. But that's
I understand. I mean, I'm not surprised by the answer, and, you know, I just popped in my head as the chief was giving his presentation, and, you know, once again, from my perspective, it was very, very frustrating to be on the ground with the residents and, you know, not being totally up to speed, but I get it, so thank you.
I will add that when we evacuate, there is a space at the EOC for elected officials. We do not interact. You interact with the city manager or the liaison through the ICS format. You will not be invited to tactical meetings. You know, those are situations where we're in the same room and discussing things, and we limit that to kind of decision makers in that staff. So you're well aware, I'm sure, of how that operates. But you please don't feel that you cannot come to the EOC, but you probably will not see me in the EOC. You will see her and our liaison, the PIO that's in the rear of the room right now, or the clerk possibly. So just won't be in those kind of tactical meetings and such, but to address needs of your constituents and things that are occurring on the ground that I'm sure you're getting communicated, as I am, through the cell phone and such. Those are things that you can communicate through the city manager and that we can address and set objectives to meet. So,
Thank you. Commissioner?
In that conversation, you mentioned you receive briefings, right? Are part of the briefings, could it be added or part of, somehow disseminated to us, like a section like for the officials, this is information coming from your report, and then this is information to share to the community, you know, because we all know everybody's sending all this kind of messaging out, and it should always be going to one spot. But you could say, now go here for the public, you know, it's just been updated. Let them know, and this is for you guys, you know, like that way, however quickly you're being briefed, then we're almost immediately after getting the same briefing.
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting to hear the time frame and where you were feeling less information versus more. As soon as our IMT team showed up, which was our backup team, I don't know if you recall, but as soon as I got those situational briefings,
Yeah.
I was transmitting them to the commission, but that didn't start probably until day 3. So you saw a bit of a lag time where our communications we were in the moment figuring it out. But that's to the chief's point on all of the training that we've been going through. We have a well-equipped, trained EOC now that even on day 1, they know what to do through the ICS structure. So those sort of formal briefings will start to be prepared earlier.
And it might have been mostly the breakdown, not so much from the city, but we had breakdowns with other entities, right? If all of a sudden the portables were coming in to the city, but you guys weren't even aware that the portables were coming in. So then we're watching from our side seeing them come in, and we're like, how are they coming in and they haven't even told us? But we've got constituents calling saying, hey, you know, where are the water pallets? I see some down in Paso Grill, but they're not, but you guys don't even know. So, or the bridge is open, right? You literally could have told me 2 seconds ago, no, it's still closed, and I'm telling someone else, and then all of a sudden I look out my window and I'm like, all the cars are just, they're just flowing, right? So it's not always necessarily because of the breakdown between the city and us, but there's a breakdown somewhere else because we're not, the communication isn't flowing to you all first and then back to us, you know, if the sheriff opened, you know, we found that after, or, you know, like I'm saying, or they pulled out the water and the food, or the laundry units are now gone, and, you know, I just finished telling everybody, go over there, and they're like, there's nothing here, you know? It's like, there's other things that aren't flowing, that are probably what we need to be communicating to the constituents, because that's what they're asking for help, you know, and it's coming after the fact.
The information comes in like a fire hose, and it all has to be filtered through the PIO, the city manager, and our staff. So it does get a little bit overwhelming. We did stand up more personnel in that PIO footprint, which assisted with some of that, but the information is not always clean. So when you mentioned the bridge opening, I believe Fran and I were standing right here and we watched the sheriff pull away and we had no idea that it was occurring. Some of those resources that showed up were not ordered by us. They were ordered by other county and state level maybe that are coming into the city that did not notify us. So that's why we had kind of a piling up of water pallets, which Mandy can comment on, just coming relentlessly over the bridge, and comfort stations and whatnot. So, but I think we have a better plan this time, and more robust and more well-trained plan for information and dissemination and sending it out. So,
Commissioner?
So is there then a completed document that all of the city employees have right now, so that if we had a emergency next week, everybody would have a thing that they could open up and go, this is what I'm doing, this is where I'm supposed to go, here's how it's going to work? Like, is that a completed?
there is an ICS 203 form that is name specific, this person goes to this position. We've sat down as directors and the leadership team and mapped that out. So that is completed.
And do all of those people then have something that tells them, or they've all been trained on exactly what they do, so that if something happened next week, we are turnkey ready to go?
All of those positions have checklists. Training is going to be coming, over time. There has been some training, but there's continuing training going forward. There's also, as the city manager mentioned, the IMT team, which is kind of a support network that comes in. So each of those positions is kind of mirrored by the IMT team, or supported in a way that they will know what they're doing when they're in the EOC.
And so do you anticipate that kind of everybody will be trained and ready to go by August 15th, when our part of hurricane season starts?
There's a lot of people in that plan, but I'm assuming that all the critical positions will be trained and ready to go when the hurricane season comes forward. Particularly the section leaders that are in that plan. There's ancillary positions below that, and depending on how those are mapped out, you could go down an org chart kind of black hole. But as it stands right now, I believe we are prepared.
Okay. So we might be ready.
Could I ask one question? Because you mentioned sunny day and gray day.
Blue sky and gray sky. So, Devin is our finance director. Blue sky, she does that every day. But when the EOC is activated, she steps into the finance section chief role, which is completely different as far as the operation. So we're asking a lot of our staff to transition quickly from these blue sky positions into these gray sky positions as we stand up the EOC.
Okay, because when you said it, I was thinking something else, because I know you have to do policy changes probably in the city, right, for human resource. Mm-hmm. And I'm just going to ask because I'm familiar with some of the counties and how they do stuff as far as like time off, for example, because you said you have critical positions. But like in vacations, how someone who's in a critical position has to go through a different level of approval for time off because now that person's gone, but you don't have someone to back up that position. So I'm going to assume these things are,
Everybody has a second, so.
even the critical.
Right, so hopefully that will help us in the preparation moving forward, so.
We've also, and the chief can speak to this, he's probably canceled many vacations. You know, if you're already over in Sweden, we're not calling you back, but if you have a vacation plan, the organization knows as a disaster service worker that vacation could be canceled because we usually have 3 days' notice that it's likely we're going to get hit. So we are then making those decisions as well and giving notice. So all of these discussions are happening right now in the organization to get people ready for every plausible outcome.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have general audience comments. City Clerk, do we have any?
Yes, Leanne Moore.
Good evening. If you'll please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, my name is Leanne Moore. My address is 540 39th Avenue, Bella Vista. I'm also the owner of Top Shape Fitness located in Dolphin Village. I'm here today looking for an update and the next steps on the proposed sign ordinance. A few specific questions based on the information I was looking at. It's my understanding that a business owner may have one sandwich board sign. Are there restrictions on where this sign can be placed and how long it can be there? Regarding the allowance for limited banner placement during businesses reopening following a major emergency event, what constitutes a major event? Would the fires at Dolphin Village grant that the remaining businesses the opportunity for special signage to indicate that we're open? Currently, businesses to the north and south of Publix have greatly been impacted due to the fires. We need to get the message out to the public that we are opened. The quickest way to do that is to have a sign closer to Gulf Boulevard. We appreciate what the landlords have done, but it's not getting the cars into the parking lot and the feet walking through our businesses. Thank you for your update and your time.
Thank you. We're really not set up to answer highly specific questions like that on a non-agenda item, but I think probably the best course of action is if city manager can take one of her cards, send her an email tomorrow, and she'll have a reply for you generally within 24 hours and give you an actual detailed breakdown of exactly what signs were and how, so you can get exactly the information that you need.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Will you be having public comment before?
Yes.
Good evening, Deborah Schechner, Bocaciega Isle, and St. Pete Beach. First, I'd like to give accolades to the Friends of the Library. They had a program last Wednesday that was phenomenal. He was a professional comedian magician, and he had the audience laughing and marveling at the same time. Tomorrow, they're going to have Shana Banana, I think at noon. So there's a lot going on if you want to get out of the heat. Usually when we cancel a meeting, the clerk will put something on the website and in that little window outside. And in the past, without even this happening, there's been, canceled meetings that I never knew about until I came up here, but that's okay. I really, really want to thank Commissioner Mulholland. I'm sorry you're leaving. You are truthful, honest. You speak loud enough so all of us can hear. To me, it's very important. And you will very well be missed. And for a lot of people who have not been here a long time, this is the normal summertime from maybe 10 or 15 years ago. Day trippers, hotels are not filled up. And in fact, the moms and pops would take pretty much most of September to refurbish and to take a vacation. So this is kind of the norm that we have right now. I know that's probably not a happy time for some of the hotels, but this is our summertime in St. Pete Beach and has been up until several years recently. And to me, that's important. I think it's important to know that there is history here. And, you know, perhaps we can figure out how to work through this for our local businesses, as go to the local restaurants, go to the local stores, help the economy with the local business people right now, because they're the ones that are probably hurting, just like that woman said over there at Dolphin Village. And honestly, it's kind of our obligation to help do that, but it's also a nice thing because we're a good community. Thank you.
Thank you.
No further comments.
Okay. Next, we have consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second?
City Clerk, if you'll please do a roll call.
Commissioner Rosnicki,
Yes.
Commissioner Mulholland,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Marriott,
Yes.
Commissioner Robinson,
Yes.
and Mayor Petrulla.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Next, we're going to move on to the District 4 Commissioner interviews. So this is a public hearing, public meeting, so we really can't exclude anyone from being in the room. Yet at the same time, I think it would be nice of the two applicants who are not currently being interviewed to step outside for the duration of the other person's interview. But I can't force you to. So if you would follow Mark into the city clerk's office, he can let you in, and then Mark will come and bring the next person in. So the first person is going to be Mr. John Maldonado. Good evening, sir. If you would like to take a moment to introduce yourself, if you have an opening statement you would like to make, and then we will proceed with the questions from the commission.
I would, and thank you. So, good evening. My name is John Maldonado. I reside at 321 North Julia Circle, and I was born and raised in Los Angeles, California. Immediately joined the United States Air Force right after graduating. Married my high school sweetheart, who's also in attendance tonight. Thank you, Julie. And served on active duty for approximately 10 years. While in the Air Force, I completed my undergraduate degree and subsequently entered my law enforcement degree, used that towards my federal career, and served an additional 24 years in federal law enforcement. During my time in both military and law enforcement, I was able to accomplish many things. I did many deployments, including 3 combat deployments, received many accolades, awards, including foreign decorations. I also want to tell you that I celebrated becoming a grandpa, and it's a very important thing to me because I hope that someday my daughter and my granddaughter and their friends will also be able to come to St. Pete Beach and enjoy the life that we've learned to love and appreciate here. I shared with the mayor and some of the commissioners during a recent volunteer breakfast in this very room that this was the first place that I ever decided to live in my entire adult lifehood. The reason that we chose St. Pete Beach was for its historic nature, the people, and most importantly, the sense of community. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Commissioners, would you be opposed to if we just kind of go down the line, we each ask one question so that, because I'm sure we're going to have overlapping questions, and this way one person isn't asking 5 questions and one doesn't get to, so we can just kind of do it the way the city clerk normally does it, and we'll start, and then we'll just move on over with each question. So Commissioner Marriott, if you'd like to start us off.
Sure. So I guess the first question is, why do you want to do this?
Thank you, and it is a great question, and quite frankly, something that I did ponder extensively. And I'll tell you that it goes back to my time volunteering here at City Hall, helping fellow residents with their permit applications. During that time, I was able to meet many, many people from not only Vina Del Mar and Paso Grill, which is obviously District 4, but throughout the entire community of St. Pete Beach. I've heard their comments and concerns for our future, and I share those. I'm very concerned about the infrastructure, the overdevelopment, as well as the effect that it has had on our local economy and our business partners. That primarily drove my decision, coupled with my extensive background in government, working at executive level boards, as well as enterprise management meetings, and then most importantly, in governance. Thank you.
Thanks.
I have a slew of questions, but
We'll just take one at a time.
yep, I know that. I know that. You know, this is almost a full-time job. Do realize. Do you have the time to dedicate? Any obligations, other obligations you have, yearly vacations or the like, that would prevent you from attending meetings?
So first and foremost, I'm full-time retired. I do know that this requires extensive amount of preparation, studying, and then also the historical things that come into play with trying to see where we're going. And on that note, I forgot to commend the mayor and the commission for all the hard work that they've done these past months in getting us over the hump and on track towards the right direction. So I hope that through more studying, through watching as many presentations as I can on previous commissions, that I'm able to come up to speed quickly. There have been some very important commission meetings that have taken place, specifically on 10 December. You know, that was huge. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for really pointing out several of the infrastructure problems that we've had. And then also some of the more recent things that have come up with noise concerns, the CUPs, you know, the conditional use permits, and then freebie, which I hope somebody will want to discuss later. Thank you.
Thank you for your volunteering. It's been, I can't say thanks enough. It's been a great program, and being able to work with the residents and help them out is key.
And thank you.
Sir, you mentioned some of the needs that we've kind of identified in the city here recently, infrastructure, the December 10th meeting, overdevelopment, and so on. What do you see as the city's current greatest need or deficiency or area that needs?
I think that the most immediate need is preparing ourselves for storms. The beach nourishment, the failed pumps, the recent discovery that we did not have a full picture from previous city officials in terms of where we are financially. That causes me a lot of concern with the expected things that we want to do in the next 5 years. You know, I think that there is a little bit of a delta that needs to be addressed even more, and I don't know where this shortfall is going to come from. You know, I've looked at budgets, I've looked at the meetings, and I've looked at numbers, and I do think that maybe we're not looking at the bigger picture. So I think that funding, infrastructure, and primarily getting the water out of here, whether it's sewage water, whether it's tidal water, those pumps, you know, I think that part of the plan is to come up with redundancies. I think that there has to be a priority on the redundancies, not only repairing, but eventually replacing those, and it's going to come at a very heavy cost.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Good evening. Where do you see the city 20 years from now?
My hope through promoting St. Pete Beach as, you know, America's premier beach, that will start to attract even more foreign investment. I know that the TDT that is reinvested from Pinellas County towards the beaches is 6%. I think that if those numbers continue to grow, and hopefully they do, that we will be able to maintain our beach character, our historic properties, and more importantly, that we will be able to absorb higher end customers. You know, I don't know what's going to happen with Dolphin Village, but, you know, my dream in 20 years would be that would be, you know, a number one place that people would go for shopping, that we would have high-end restaurants in St. Pete Beach. Dress code is always kind of a contentious issue out here. I'd like to have a place or two where we can go out and dress a little bit if we wanted to, and if not, flip-flops and shorts are fine. But in 20 years, I see this as still being a number one destination for St. Pete Beach, Clearwater, and Pinellas County.
Yes, sir.
Sir, thank you for volunteering. When did you start volunteering at the front desk out here to help the residents?
I was one of the initial volunteers, sir.
You were one of the initial ones?
Yes, sir.
Good, good.
Yeah, in all transparency, I know the other two applicants because they've attended meetings and things like that. So I'm happy to hear that you have been involved. It's just, I don't think I've ever met you, but I'm happy that you've thrown your hat in the ring here, and I appreciate you volunteering to do this job, so thank you.
Thank you.
Follow-up questions?
Are you, have you thought about, or have you already decided whether or not you would run for election on this position as well, whether you're appointed or not?
So I have thought about it in full transparency. I'm not going to declare now that I am, but I also saw this appointed interim position as a great trial run, not only for myself, but also for the commission to see if I'd be a good fit. And with the support of my neighbors and business owners, I'd like to get their input, and then also that'll help me shape a better decision.
Thank you.
I ran on a Residents First platform, which means decisions are made with the needs of the residents coming first. What is your ideology for as a commissioner?
So it's preserve, protect, and promote. Promote the ideas of my neighbors and business owners. Protect what it is that we're trying to restore here, and preserve our history. So it would be in that order: protect, preserve, and promote.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So you're looking to come and serve as a commissioner, and so we certainly appreciate your involvement with the volunteers and the permitting department. But in a more official capacity, have you served on any boards? Have you looked at serving any of that capacity? We've had commissioners in the past who've come in with, zero involvement, zero experience, zero attendance, zero participation in the city's, governance, and wanting to step right into a commission spot.
So I have zero experience at the state and local level. That said, I do have experience serving on international boards of directors. I served on the American Overseas School of Rome Directors Board, and then I've also served on several law enforcement related working groups and committees. And then more importantly, just before we moved here, I was the president and vice president of our homeowners association. So I understand how important it is to incorporate the input, from both city and local officials. We fought very hard on making some legislative changes through our association, in particular pertaining to safety. And, it was almost like we had to negotiate with the city, and then also involve, corporate counsel, attorneys and things like that, always trying to use a neighborly approach, no matter whether it was, at the involving fiduciary responsibilities or, just simply just trying to get neighbors to come together and work together.
Very good. Excellent. Thank you, sir.
Just looking at some of the questions they had here, but I'll go ahead and ask. Should the Form 6 financial disclosure injunction be resolved and the requirement be reinstated, are you willing to complete that form in accordance with state statute?
Absolutely. And I'm also used to doing those, having been in federal government service.
Thank you.
I think that is a great question.
Commissioner Wisniewski asked the question I was going to ask. So.
He was doing so well.
No, I think that's important. I think all the applicants should be asked that question. I just have a few notes from 2023. The Florida Senate voted 35-5 to approve the Form 6 requirement. And in April of 2023, the House voted 113-2 to approved that requirement, and then in May of 2023, the governor signed that into law. That has been in or under injunction for some time. I think I was probably the last person that filled it out in the state, but I think there's a reasonable chance that that will be reappearing. So I do think it's important that anybody that takes this position in order to hopefully prevent some of the things that myself and Commissioner Lorenzen was involved in, that people recognize that there's a real possibility that that may reappear in the near future, and there should be a willingness, in my opinion, to fill out a Form 6 should it become necessary. So thank you for asking that question.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant?
I just have one other.
I do. Have you attended any commission meetings, workshops, community meetings, or town hall, or for District 4 or any other district?
I log in and do them online. I find that that's very convenient. It also lets me, take notes and get up and use the restroom whenever I need to.
Yell at the TV, right?
Well, I can tell you.
They're very spirited and go very long. So.
I can tell you I like watching some of the board meetings on YouTube at 1.5 speed because it goes a little quicker. So.
And I do love your recaps. Those are great to catch up on.
Commissioner?
Are you involved in any organizations that may influence any decisions that need to be made as a commissioner or anybody who sits up here?
No.
Thank you.
Do you believe your personal views align with the views of District 4 when it comes to development or redevelopment? And what are those views?
So my views are that we would love and wish to continue to have the historic feel that District 4 has. Talking to most of my neighbors, friends, and business owners, I think that my views align with the desire to keep things where they are. But at the same time, redevelopment is important. I think that structured redevelopment that brings, beauty and attracts business that's favorable to both the citizens, residents, and business owners is something that I would seek to continue to have in District 4.
What is a CUP and how does the process work?
The continuous, unconditional, no, the conditional, okay, this is why it's important to use words and not acronyms. Conditional use permit is something that's provided to resident or business owners that are looking to change something that is not already in existence. A recent one that I can go back and look at would be the desire by a developer and hotel to extend an existing requirement for standoffs from 64 to, I believe, 31 feet, and they were seeking to have that amended to suit their needs, despite, clear characteristics of that area being abused.
And the second part was, how does the process work?
The process is that that's presented to the commission. The commission hears the petition, and at that point, they decide whether or not that's something that they wish to adopt.
Thank you.
What are the residents and small businesses' needs and desires in District 4? And are those the same as other districts, or are there inherent differences? And if so, what are they? It's a three-part.
Yeah. So the desires are to increase, obviously, the revenue that's been lost by the recent storms, and that applies to all of St. Pete Beach. What District 4's business owners are hoping to do is keep the small characteristic historical shops that they have. How that differs along the beach, obviously, is that we have bigger vendors, more traffic, and then also higher and different varieties of opportunities for people to purchase things. Whereas in District 4, you find local souvenirs, Fort Passett Grill, and some of these other locations down the beach that is more specific to St. Pete Beach in general. I hope that answered that 4-part question.
I think so, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. No? All right, any other questions for Mr. Maldonado?
Who is the largest revenue provider to our tax base,
The TDT,
to the tax base itself?
the tax base itself, the largest provider are the hotels. From tourism, folks that spend overnight stays and incur the, I believe, 6% TDT.
It's actually the residents?
Through taxes, property taxes, which augment the 94 million.
So we pay about 80% of the tax.
Yeah, I'm very surprised to see that through the agreement, such a small portion of that comes back to the residents. But thank you.
And as a commissioner, what are your responsibilities and to whom?
The responsibilities are to the citizens of St. Pete Beach. The responsibility for me would be obviously to ensure that I get their input and that I'm their voice and not speaking from my personal opinion.
Have you read the comp plan?
The COP?
No, the actual comprehensive plan.
I have not read it in its entirety. I have seen it as well as some of the other plans that are out there. You know, I'm still digging through, trying to get some final numbers, and then also see how continuity works here in terms of, you know, some of the things that were discussed today with the city manager. I found that very informative, and then also it was very good to hear firsthand how those limitations are put in place for the commission.
And what is the relationship to the land development code, excuse me, from the comp plan or comprehensive plan?
I can't answer that.
Just one question. For District 4, what do you see as the greatest need for District 4? Just District 4.
The greatest need for District 4, I believe, is the continued beach nourishment and protecting our wildlife.
Are you aware of Friends of St. Pete Beach and/or Protect St. Pete Beach? And what do you know of these two specific groups, and who do they represent?
So yes, I've heard of both. They're greatly publicized. They have a website where they espouse their mission, which is, I believe, that keeping the historic Passett Grill historic and maintaining a quaint beach charm. But more importantly, they're really opposed to the overdevelopment of St. Pete Beach. I think that's a common theme that we have in both those groups.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioners?
Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mark, if you would please bring in Mr. Shiros. Bob? Good evening, sir.
Hi.
So we are going to begin with giving the opportunity for an opening statement. Just introduce yourself, anything else that you'd like to say, and then we will kind of go in sequence, and the commissioners will each ask you questions.
Okay. So my name is Bob Shiros. I live at 1002 Passigrel Way. It's between 10th and 11th. I currently do a lot of volunteering for a lot of the Passigrel events, like the golf cart, bonfire, that type of stuff. I'm getting ready to retire, and I'm looking to do a little bit more work and community involvement in the community. I think St. Pete Beach is really experiencing an unprecedented rebuilding cycle, and I'd like to be part of that. I want to work to maintain the history, the charm, and the sense of community at both Passigrel and Vina, and strike a balance between businesses and residents. As a property owner in St. Pete Beach, I walk at Passigrel. I walk my dog through the neighborhoods all around 8th Street, and all my neighbors come to me firsthand and give me suggestions of. As soon as I announced I was running, I got a lot of opportunity for input. My dog is really appreciating this because the walks have been a lot longer. But I know firsthand what's affecting my neighbors. My wife and I started the Passigrel General Store, so I have a very keen firsthand knowledge of what goes on in a small business. Unfortunately, that store only lasted about 8 months before the hurricane took it out. But I believe my engineering background, leading a $40 million business unit and supporting a team of over 140 people, solving complex engineering problems for manufacturing pharmaceuticals, would give me a different perspective to the commission. I've been a property owner since 2018. I've lived here since 2020. And I follow a lot of the stuff that goes on in the commission remotely. I watch some live. I like to watch the videos so that I can skip through some of the stuff a little faster. I do read the notes too when I don't have the time. But I have a tremendous respect for the amount of time and effort that you as commissioners put in, and I really look forward to trying to join the team. With that.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Merritt?
Sure. Why the commission? I mean, if you've been watching the meetings, are you sure you want to do this?
Yeah, I am, and I've done some different volunteering. I think that, as I'm getting ready to retire, one of my biggest concerns is being bored, and I don't think that's going to happen as a commissioner.
I think you're right.
This is basically almost like a full-time job. With that said, do you have the time to dedicate? Do you have any obligations, yearly vacations or the like, to prevent you from attending meetings?
The only vacation I have coming up that's scheduled is I have a cruise in September for 9 days. Other than that, and even working right now, I don't travel, I work from home. I used to travel a lot before COVID. Now I do everything via video conference. So as soon as I figure out what my exit strategy is, whether it's going to be in June, July, or August, or a little later, I'm negotiating with the company right now what that's going to be. But I'm looking forward to the next phase.
Thank you.
So we have other openings at the city for board vacancies and so on, and I guess the question is, we appreciate you putting your name in the hat for being an appointed commissioner. Why not start in another capacity and kind of get your feet wet?
First off, I like to start at the top. I'd rather be in a position to guide the whole ship than a little piece of it. I find this to be a little bit more challenging than one committee that just works on stuff. The historical committee is very important, but I think I would be bored doing the same thing over and over again. The finance committee would be the same way. This is a little bit more diverse, and I find that more challenging.
What do you see as the #1 priority for District 4, and just District 4, not the city?
Well, I don't think there's just one. There's a lot. Certainly, the title check valves is something that a lot of the residents have talked to me about. The maintenance that needs to be done, rebuilding after the hurricane, Mary Pier, the shuffleboard courts. I live next to the shuffleboard courts. I don't know if you realize how often those courts are used, or even how often the barbecue grills are used. That just amazes me, the amount of people at barbecue at that park. But beach nourishment, getting the swim buoys back. Right now, there's no buoys for the, in front of the the Paradise Grill. The shuffleboard court with replacing the structure that's there. That's something that's important. Also looking at short-term rentals, that's something that a lot of people have brought up to me. They're very concerned about that, and especially now where the amount of rental properties are down, they're very concerned about how that's going to be affected. And they're also very concerned about how the community is going to be rebuilt. Paso Grill is a very unique community in the sense that we have some visitors that come in for the day, and we have a lot of residents. So there's a unique mix there, and trying to maintain that sense of community. The Paso Grill Community Center and Association is something very good and very active. So I think trying to keep the historical piece of Paso Grill and rebuild and not have a bunch of McMansions is something that is on a lot of people's mind and mine as well.
Thank you.
Commissioner Mulholland?
Hi, Bob. You mind if I call you Bob?
No, you've done it all the way, all the time.
So I'm not going to ask a lot of questions. I do have one. I'd like to just make a comment. I would just ask you, don't forget about Vina.
I understand.
There's less action on Vina, but they are half the district.
Yep.
So in April of 2023, the Florida Senate approved a requirement to file, for all elected officials to file a Form 6 by a vote of 35-5. In April of 2023, the Florida House approved that same legislation as a vote of 113-2. And then in May of 2023, the governor of Florida signed that. So that is currently tied up with a, I don't want to get too political, but a left-leaning judge has put an injunction on that. But when you look at how much support that received from the government of Florida, there's certainly a very real possibility that that will get overturned and be put back in place. Are you willing to file a Form 6 should that become a requirement?
Reluctantly, I probably would sign it.
Well, I understand that, yes. Okay, thank you.
Wouldn't be my first choice.
Understand, but you are willing to fill out a Form 6 should that get reinstituted? Thank you.
Whether you get appointed or not, are you considering running for this seat for the election in November?
Yes.
I ran on a residents first platform, which means decisions are made with the needs of the residents coming first and foremost. What is your ideology as a commissioner?
I understand the need for the residents, and certainly as a resident, I understand, what comes first, but I think we have to balance a little bit about the businesses. So, we were a small business owner. I understood some of the pitfalls of that, some of the costs involved with that. I understand the way what the residents want. So I think we need to balance that, maybe lean towards the residents, but we can't ignore the businesses. And, just listening to the woman talk about how she wants to get a sign up, for her yoga studio, I totally understand that, and that doesn't really impede on the residents. So there's a balance, and you have to manage that. I know, like, when we talk about the decibel levels of having, amplified music, right? The business wants that. Residents don't want to hear it in their house. Totally understand that. I wouldn't want to hear it in my house. So you have to come up with a plan. You guys did a good job with that, to say, okay, we'll allow you to do that, but it can't be heard in the residence.
Thank you.
What do you see as the city's current greatest needs?
I would say, just as an engineer, lack of maintenance. I think that we don't do enough routine maintenance and preventative maintenance to be in a better position to prepare for some of these things. I was in the showers, in the FEMA showers. I was using the FEMA toilets. I was walking down there at 3 o'clock in the morning because that's when I had to go. But I think, I put a generator in, so I was prepared for electric. I didn't think of anything about the water. So I'm very much into routine maintenance and keeping up our utilities.
Okay.
Are you a member of any organization that would influence any decision taken here on the dais?
The only membership I have is the International Society of Pharmaceutical Engineers. Probably won't interfere.
I don't have any further questions unless something triggers a question, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir.
I don't think I have any further questions.
Who is the largest revenue provider of our tax base?
I don't know. I would assume the businesses, but a particular business?
No, it's actually
I don't know offhand.
it's actually the residents.
Okay, that makes sense.
What is a CUP and how does the process work?
A conditional use permit. I always get that wrong. Come to the board for you make an application, right? You come to the board, you state what you want to do, why you want to do it, and then there's conditions approved with that, and then there's follow-up on how those conditions are followed up to make sure that they are being agreed, that what was agreed upon is actually what's happening, I guess is the best way to say it. So it's a way to get something around the entire structure. Like, you have a specification, and it's a way to I don't want to say get around that specification, but let's say have a way to use that, do something not against that permit, but not against that structure, that specification, but to be able to use something around that with certain conditions. I guess that's the easiest way. It's temporary. It could be temporary. It could go with the building. It could go with the owner. So it depends on how you structure it.
Have you read the comp plan or a comprehensive plan?
I've read part of it. I fell asleep.
It's not easy reading. What is the relationship to the land development code from the comp plan?
I don't know that.
What are the residents and small businesses' needs and desires in District 4 And are those the same as other districts, or are there inherent differences? And if so, what are they?
I can't talk about the other districts. I can say that some of the businesses, for example, some of the hotels, have concerns about short-term rentals and how that takes away from their revenue. I know the ice cream shop has a problem or a concern that a ice cream truck keeps coming by. They feel that's taking their business, and they feel that shouldn't be happening. I'm trying to think what else offhand. Parking is another area. They would love more parking, and a better way to enforce that parking.
As a commissioner, what are your responsibilities and to whom?
Well, I think my first responsibilities is to the residents of District 4 and the businesses in District 4, listening to what their requirements are, what their needs are, and presenting them to the other commissioners and the mayor, and finding a way to meet their needs, which typically means finding money to be able to do that.
Do you believe your personal views align with the views of District 4 when it comes to development and redevelopment? And what are those views?
I think my views are probably a little stricter than what the current regulations allow. But I would yield to what the current plat is and overlays are. For example, I really believe that we should have look at the impervious ground that's allowed and try and reduce that so that there's more water runoff. But if you do that, then the houses become smaller. So there's a trade-off there. I understand what my neighbors want. So my view would be a little bit more stricter than what they're doing today. But that's my concern is, how are we going to prevent for the next hurricane and even some of the storms? As a great example, I drive a Mini Cooper. When we get rain, I can't go out the alley because the alley floods.
And I didn't catch how long you'd lived here. I got confused between 2010 and 2020. So
Sorry,
there was a 2018, I think, in there too.
So I bought a property in 2018, okay, and then I moved in 2020.
Okay. Have you ever lived on another barrier island?
I lived on Coquina Key, bigger island, but.
And of all the places you could live, why did you pick St. Pete Beach?
The beach, the sense of community. We lived on Coquina Key, and we had the property here. We would use it, and what we found is that on Coquina Key, we'd have dinner and we'd sit in front of the TV. When we got here, we would have dinner and then we'd go out. We'd walk around. We'd talk to people. There was restaurants we could walk to. There was Shadracks. We could do a lot of different things. So we decided that we would come here, moved into the property. We thought our plan was to wait a year, understand what was going on, get a lay of the land, and we waited 3 days and made a bid on a property and won that. So we loved it, and that's why we're here.
Are you aware of Friends of St. Pete Beach and/or Protect St. Pete Beach?
No. Well, Protect St. Pete Beach, yes. The first one, you said Francis?
Friends of.
Oh, okay.
Friends of.
Yes, that I've heard of. Okay, sorry.
That's okay. And what do you know of these two specific groups, and who do they represent?
I don't know much about them. I just know they're more involved in the new beach renourishment projects.
I think I covered all.
All right, Commissioners, last chance. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mark, if you would please bring in Mr. Greiger. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
If, what we'll do is we'll give you an opportunity to introduce yourself, kind of tell us, what prompted you to be here. And then we're going to go down the line and we'll ask you the same questions that we asked the other applicants.
Sounds good. I'm Colonel Mike Greiger. I live on the island of Vina del Mar. Been a resident here for 25 years, and I've always tried to serve my community. So I see that there's a vacancy because we're losing, unfortunately, our commissioner. And so I know our commissioner, I've talked with him, and shared many things about our community together. I'm sad to see you go. What prompted me to step forth is my neighbors, friends, and others asked me to step forth because of my involvement with the city in the past, my involvement with county government, state government. So I thought maybe I should step in and try to fill this vacancy.
Thank you, sir.
So what do you see as, what do you see as the thing that is most important in Pass-A-Grille? And what's most important to Pass-A-Grille, is what's most important to Pass-A-Grille different than what's most important to Vina del Mar?
Well, let me correct you a little bit, because you forgot Vina del Mar. And that's all part of our community as well, District 4. So Pass-A-Grille, Vina del Mar, they're two unique characters in District 4. Pass-A-Grille has problems with infrastructure. If we look at what happened during the hurricane, we saw that the beach eventually became the road. So all the dunes that were placed in there, in my opinion, late by the county due to the stalling of the Army Corps of Engineers, and I was involved in that the last time we had a renourishment because I was on the Beach Stewardship Board. So I had discussions with the Army Corps of Engineers. I had discussion with the commander of the Army Corps of Engineers before they put the dunes in at the cost of the county government. I asked him for some relief on what we needed for that, and he told me that his hands were tied at the Washington, D.C. level. I reached out to our state representative and also Senator Rick Scott and asked him specifically if they would intervene on our behalf because those dunes are so important to protecting the infrastructure of Pass-A-Grille. And once we did get the county to go ahead and do those, we had to put the sea oats and other things. So there's many things that you can do to harden the dunes that protect the infrastructure and that will protect the homes and residents. So that's one of our big challenges there.
And so do you think that I think part of my question was, does Vina have a different main concern than the rest of us?
Well, as you might not know, but many of the homes in Vina didn't suffer flood damage.
Correct.
So, being high and elevated, they don't suffer that same thing. So the dune restoration really wouldn't have had an effect on the Vina del Mar residents. So that would be a difference in there. As far as roads, we redid Pass-A-Grille Way years ago. We did it the right way. We put in all the new lines and things like that. And once again, if we look at Boca Ciega Drive, and I know this from being on the Finance and Budget Review Committee, Bocasiega Drive needs to be redone, Gulf Way needs to be redone, and so we're looking at creative ways in which we can reaccomplish that without taking us into debt. Our debt 5 years down the road for capital improvement for those types of projects are looking at $21 million. So can we resurface those roads and not pay that? Yes, we can, but then we're going to pay a cost because of the infrastructure beneath it has failed.
This can be a full-time job. And do you have the time to dedicate? Do you have any obligations, yearly vacations or the like, that would prevent you from attending meetings?
I'm an airline pilot. Have you ever been on a canceled flight? I commute to work, so I'm subject to the whims of the weather and maintenance and things like that as well. So there could be a time that, you know, I have pretty good control of my schedule because I'm pretty senior at the airline. And so I get to pick and choose where I want to fly and things like that. But there's always that chance that I can go ahead and do that. As far as vacations and things like that, no, I would schedule them around meetings.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
What capacities have you served in the cities, other boards, et cetera? In St. Pete Beach.
Well, I served on the Beach Stewardship Committee, and I serve on the Finance and Review Committee.
Thank you.
Finance and Budget Review Committee. But I've done other things as well. You know, dedicating the bridge, that took an integrated effort with the Florida Department of Transportation because our city manager didn't want to take on the task. The reason I took on the task is because I saw that our city has a resident that is a Medal of Honor recipient. And they were going to name the bridge after a politician whose name is all around this county, who I advise, C.W. Bill Young. And C.W. Bill Young has a lot of things named for him because he was a true statesman. He served us well here in the county at the federal level. But we have a hero that lives in our community, and that man deserves to have his name on that bridge and causeway. So I took it up with the city manager at the time, and I also brought it to my commissioner's attention. Commissioner said, would you talk to the mayor about it? I talked to the mayor about it. The mayor said, would you head up the committee? I said, yes, I would. Took it on. We took on the Florida Department of Transportation. We got the approvals to have the ceremony and to also put a plaque. The plaque hasn't been placed yet. And we had a community celebration. So this is something that I think, I don't mean to drone on, but I think it brings a sense of community together. Rather than being 4 distinct districts, we should function working to be a city. And a city has to support itself. And events like that brought the city together. And I think we could do more things like that together.
Hi. Are you a member of any organization that may influence any of your decisions while sitting on the commission?
People don't influence me in particular. I have to weigh the pluses and minuses of each case that I've heard, and I've heard many different cases. I've sat in on the CUP discussions and things like that. I've made my moments here and spoken to the commission about my aspects and my feelings about CUPs and things like that. I've communicated with my commissioner about my opinions and feelings. But as far as being influenced by outside groups, no, I'm my own person and I can make those decisions, but I represent a constituency. And in order to have representative government, we have to listen to our constituents. And constituents is everybody in the community in District 4. That's who I would be representing. But like I said previously, just a moment ago, we have to make decisions as a city and bring our city together and do these things so that we all benefit from this.
Commissioner?
Good evening, Colonel Mike.
Good evening, sir.
In April of 2023, the Florida Senate voted 35-5 to approve a requirement of Form 6, which is a financial disclosure form for elected officials. Later that same month, the Florida House voted 113-2 to approve that same legislation. And May of 2023, the governor signed it into law. That legislation was put under an injunction by a judge where it currently sits. Based on the overwhelming support within the Florida government that legislation received, there's a reasonable chance that that requirement will be reinstituted. Would you be willing to submit to the Form 6 requirement should it become a requirement again?
If it's a law, then yes, you have to comply with the law.
Thank you.
Whether or not you're appointed here tonight, are you planning on running for this seat for the election in November?
I really don't know.
Okay.
I ran on a residents first platform, which means decisions are made with the needs of the residents first. What is your ideology as a commissioner?
Well, I think I've indicated already that we have to function as a city. We all rely on each other, and we need each other for this government to function. I represent a constituency, and like I said, I have to listen to them. I also know business owners, and I see that sometimes we are seeing a conflict, and there doesn't need to be that conflict. Business owners have a stake in this community because we go there. We go to their businesses. We utilize their businesses. It's just like Ms. Schechner said, you know, this is the time to support our local businesses and get out there and visit them and make sure that they can continue to keep their staff, their workers on board, and some of them earn their living this way. So I have to represent my constituents and listen to them, but I also have to be cognizant and do a good job as a leader explaining myself and my decisions to people, and also seek their input.
Thank you.
What do you see as the city's current greatest need?
Money. Seriously, we have a shortfall of money for the infrastructure that we need to replace, the capital improvements that we need to make. And many of these are not wants, they are needs. And looking over the budget, we had to prioritize all of those capital improvement programs. And so looking at those things, it's hard to prioritize those and push others out for a number of years because they are actual needs, not wants. So that's our number one need here.
What do you feel is the number one need for District 4?
I think hardening the dunes needs to be done. Because it does protect the infrastructure and it protects the people that live there, their businesses, and their homes. And we saw the devastation that happened there. When I went down afterwards, I stayed on the island. When I went down afterwards, the beach was in the roads. And local businesses and residents were trying to dig themselves out. So we had weeks of digging and things like that. I think if we look at hardening the dunes, it will protect most of that area much better than it did in the past. I asked the county to get involved in this long before we had the dunes actually replaced. I took films, I sent them to Commissioner Brian Scott, and he's up on the north side. He goes, I count on you as my eyes and ears on the south side. And so I took videos when the waves were right there at the Paso Grill, Paradise Grill, and the waves were lapping up on the concrete there. And I took pictures, and then I showed the decay of the dunes. And I said, Commissioner, these dunes need to be hardened, and they need to be hardened to do this. And you learn about those things because serving on the Beach Stewardship Committee, you know, I looked at wave actions. Being in the military, I had Marines that worked for me. Marines, what do? They take beaches. I talked to the beach I call them my beach party. I talked to the beach party. I said, what do we need to do here and do this? And they engineered different solutions and options. So I learned quite a bit about that. So that's infrastructure is our number one need. You know, we need to take care of these, the stormwater, the sewer, the reclaimed water, the roads, and the beach to protect it. Thank you.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Do you believe your personal views align with the views of District 4 when it comes to development and redevelopment? And what are those views?
My views on redevelopment are we need redevelopment. I look at, I had friends that I wanted to visit. I didn't have room in my home, so I went and I looked at a couple of the rooms in the large resort district, and I couldn't recommend them. They're old, they need work, they consume more energy. You know, you talk about our comprehensive plan, we talk about LEEDs and other green projects that we have in there, and those are our building standards and things like that. We want to promote that. So I would say redevelopment is something that needs to go on up and down the beach. And that also will boost up our ad valorem taxes, which are kind of out of balance, if you will. And so that's going to help out with that as well. What is my philosophy, you're asking? I have to represent my constituents. But again, as a leader, I have to explain things to people as well. And I have to explain, how do we get the resources in order to do this? But we also have to protect our way of life, and we have to protect our way of life quality. And that includes things like pollution, that includes overcrowding, that includes overdensity and things like that. I'm not for huge expansion. Completely frank about that. Redevelopment, I'm for.
Thank you.
What is a CUP and how does the process work?
Conditional use permit, if I'm going to explain this as a leader to my constituents, I would say that these are not building permits. These are conditional use based on conditions. And if you look in the Land Development Code, section 4.1, it says that these are not a right. You don't have a right to go ahead and, you know, pour in billions of dollars or millions of dollars and things like that and just get this approved. We have rules and regulations that you have to, the Land Development Code, the Comprehensive Plan, are those two things that are tied together so that we have a roadmap in order to do that. So conditional use, hey, I make my case to you. I'm asking for you to approve this, the commission, to approve this. Here's my plans. It goes through multiple phases, a technical review, the planners. Does it comply with what we have as our character districts? Does it have the applicable items that we want as far as environmental concerns, again, taking in the LEEDs and all those other types of things, and then go ahead and make their presentation and make a request.
Who is the largest revenue provider to our tax base?
The residents. And that's what's out of balance.
Have you read the comprehensive plan?
Yes.
What is the relationship from the comprehensive plan to the Land Development Code?
The Land Development Code is like the rule book that supports a comprehensive plan. As a matter of fact, you know, the comprehensive plan, it's kind of the way we brief a fighter mission. We have goals, we have objectives, and then comprehensive plan has policies. And so when I brief up my attack missions, I have goals, brief those, objectives, here's how we're going to do it, and then the mission elements would be the policies.
What document has the standards for review on conditional use permits?
The Land Development Codes.
And what are the residents and small businesses' needs and desires in District 4? And are they the same as other districts, or are there inherent differences? And if so, what are they?
Needs for District 4. Again, we have a small downtown area, if you will, downtown Paso Grow under the lights. You know, I hope you've all come on down there and celebrated a little. We had a great New Year's ball drop. That was a lot of fun, getting to be an annual event. What are the needs down there? Well, again, when we look at redoing Gulf Way, we're going to be interrupting those businesses. So when we do eventually, whether we're going to mill and pave or we're going to replace like we did Paso Grow Way, we need to make sure that those stakeholders are brought into the planning effort. How are we going to do that? How are we less going to impact those businesses, and how are we less going to impact the residents who come and go? How are we less going to impact the workers? There's going to be a lot of lost parking and things like that. This is going to have a significant input. So it's going to have stakeholders that are participating in the planning process.
Are you aware of Friends of St. Pete Beach and/or Protect St. Pete Beach? And what do you know of these two specific groups, and who do they represent?
I am aware of both of them because I'm a resident of the city, so yes. Friends of St. Pete Beach and Protect St. Pete Beach, one's a PAC and one is an advocacy group, if you will. And they would advocate for, as I get their email and I read what they're saying. And I think anybody should, because that's a large chunk of our population gets that email, and you get some good information from there. And you also get other opinions. You know, people will talk about, they'll put their piece out, but that begins a community discussion as well.
How long have you lived in St. Pete Beach?
25 years.
And of all the places you could live, what made you pick St. Pete Beach?
I started coming down here when I was a lieutenant. I flew into MacDill Air Force Base, and my squadron mate had a condo in Tierra Verde. And I went around Tierra Verde, and he had a jet ski, and I used to take that jet ski out for hours, out around Shell Island, St. Pete Beach. He introduced me to his friends that lived here. One of them lived on Vina Del Mar. Whenever I had a jet and some time, I would fly into the base and come and visit St. Pete Beach. And eventually I lost both my parents. I lived in Michigan. I lost both my parents. And my reason for staying in Michigan was less and less. Being an airline pilot, I can live anywhere I'm willing to commute to work from. So I always enjoyed my time here from the early 90s or mid 90s here, and just decided that I need to seek a home here.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Should we open it for audience comments and then deliberation? City Clerk, do we have any audience comments on this issue?
Nancy Cerube.
If you'll please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, good evening. My name is Nancy Cerube. I'm 109 11th Avenue, St. Pete Beach. Good evening, Commissioners, Mayor, City Manager. I'm here to express my full support for Bob Shiros, for District 4 Commissioner for our city. I've known Bob for 7 years, and I can tell you firsthand he is not here for the title. He's definitely stepping up to serve. Bob is a reliable, dedicated member of our community who constantly shows up when it counts. I can't tell you how many times I've called him for just a small favor. I'm right there. Where it's volunteering his time, he's volunteered. We're on the committee for Party Under the Lights. He's always willing to help. What do you need, and how can I make your life better? That's what I want to hear. He always listens to the neighbor concerns, always lending a hand where needed, and Bob has a steady commitment to make the city a better place for everyone. His approachable and friendly nature makes him an asset to the community. He understands the importance of the communication and calibration, and he brings people together with respect and purpose. Bob has a strong sense of responsibility to the city and its residents like us. He has constantly expressed the importance of improving our infrastructure, supporting local businesses, which you clearly heard from here tonight, and striving for transparency in our government. I believe he will represent the people of District 4 with integrity, energy, and common sense. The city deserves leaders like yourself who care deeply about the place we call home. The leaders work hard to stay involved and put our community first. Bob Shiros is that kind of person. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Rich Lorenzen.
If you please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Rich Lorenzen, 22nd Avenue. I didn't expect to talk tonight because I thought this was going to happen tomorrow night, and I hope a lot of folks haven't been disenfranchised from showing up and getting a chance to speak, but I think we have several very strong candidates. All three of them, I think, are good people with good backgrounds. I see two that have kind of stepped out and one that stepped a little bit higher up on the scale. I can tell you, as my time when I was sitting in Joe Mulholland's seat before him, filling him as an interim, I got 2 phone calls from Vina Del Mar. I got at least 80 from Paso Grill. So why do I bring that up? I can tell you that the problems are all in Paso Grill, and it's been all touched on tonight. It's the infrastructure, it's those tidal flow valves that are still not repaired after 3 years now. I think we're up to failures. It's the city seawalls that need to still be finished up. It's beach renourishment, it's parking, it's 8th Avenue. There's so many issues that are critical to Paso Grill. And when I listen to all 3 candidates, I kind of go, boy, all 3 of them are pretty sharp guys, but which one's got boots on the ground and a stake in the fight and is going to be the one walking around Paso Grill all the time? Does that mean that Vina doesn't have any issues? No. But Vina's a lucky community. It's kind of does its own thing. It's got houses, doesn't have a lot of infrastructure problems, and we just don't have a lot of issues with Vina. So I think that when I sit down and listen to everybody tonight, I think there's 2 that kind of pop out at me. I think I'm going to throw my hat in the ring for Bob Shiros, and I think John's done a wonderful job. I think he's an excellent guy, too. I think he comes with a clean heart. He has no agenda. He has no baggage. He has no intertwined connections to various groups that I think sometimes get a little bit cumbersome. And I think he's just going to be an outstanding guy to represent District 4, Vina, and Paso Grill. Thank you.
Thank you.
No further comments?
I'm sorry, my heart indicated that.
Deb Scheckner.
If you please state your name and address for the record.
Deborah Scheckner, there you go, Bocusega Isle Drive in St. Pete Beach, Florida. We need somebody who is knowledgeable, has attended meetings, have spoken before this commission, and I will tell you, certain areas of our city are still a mess. I hate to say it out loud, half of my neighbors out of 80 are still not in their homes. So we need somebody who understands that. We need somebody who is up to date, can sit in District 4 seat immediately and know. You have to know the comprehensive plan, what a CUP is. These are the issues that are coming up all the time. You have to know that the residents don't want 20-story buildings. These are all important, and I think Colonel Greiger seems to be, in my opinion, the best candidate. The other 2 candidates would probably be better off trying for a board seat or doing some other things in the community to get the feel of it. Until you're sitting up there, you don't have the feel of what's going on as a government official or a planning board member, which is a very excellent way to start. Colonel Greiger has lived here 25 years. I think that stands for something because I feel history in the city is not taken into account many times with decisions that are made. He knew the answers. He understands the city. He's been involved. He's been on a board. Those are the kind of things that say to me, yes, you can sit in that seat. It's very, very important. I think all of you know that because without knowledge and without understanding of how our city works, it will be very long catch-up period, without a doubt. I think you all know that it's not easy. I know. Some of our commissioners here attended meetings all the time, spoke all the time. And I have heard Colonel Greiger here in the most important of times, and he speaks well, he reaches out to the community, and just because Vina is not flooding doesn't mean Vina doesn't have issues and problems. So I kind of find that a little condescending when you take Vina and just say, we don't have to worry about them. They can take care of themselves. Well, no, they can't. They're part of our city, and they deserve everything every other resident in the city has. And do we still have flooding problems around? Yes. Research, information, and I think Colonel Greiger, connections to get things done. When he reaches out to county commissioners as a resident on our behalf, that's important.
Thank you.
No further comments.
Okay. All right. Next is...
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to amend my previously submitted resignation to make it effective upon completion of a couple brief comments, if that's agreeable to the commission.
Yes, sir. Would love to hear from you.
I'm definitely going to miss working for the respectful residents of this city. And there are a number of, in fact, the majority of the people in the audience tonight are folks that I take great honor in serving them. And I will miss working and representing those respectful residents. So I will miss you all. So thank you very much for allowing me to represent you. I want to thank the city staff for all the assistance that I've received from them over the last 17 months while I've been on the commission and on the Board of Adjustment. There's been a lot of changes in the city staff, and I would say it's absolutely for the better. And thank you, Madam City Manager, for contributing greatly to that. So I just want to thank the city staff that's here tonight, as well as all the other city staff that have truly been very helpful to me. And then finally, I'm going to miss very much working with the charter officers, as well as this commission. We haven't always agreed on everything, but I know we've all worked hard, and I truly will miss working with you all. I was retired for a number of years, or a few years, decided to get back into the work environment, and thanks to the storms, we had plenty of work to do on top of all the additional work that was necessary. But I really will miss you all, and I thank you for allowing me to serve with you.
I hereby resign. Let them know you resigned.
Mr. City Attorney, do you need a formal declaration?
Maybe a motion to accept the resignation?
Is there a motion to accept Commissioner Mulholland's resignation, effective immediately?
I move to accept his resignation effective immediately.
I second.
City Clerk, if you'll please do a roll call.
Vice Mayor Marriott,
Yes.
Commissioner Robinson,
Yes.
Commissioner Rosnicki,
Yes.
and Mayor Petrilla.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Would any of you like to say a few words to Commissioner Mulholland? Now might be a good opportunity.
I I just wanted to thank Commissioner Mulholland. I did have the opportunity to meet with him before he took his seat, so I got to know him a little bit. Even though he doesn't get my name right, it's okay, because it keeps it light up here whenever we have to laugh about it. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate your service, you know, all around the country, to us, to the citizens. I know this is a hard decision for you, but you know, sometimes we do have to make decisions for ourselves and for our family, and I do appreciate even learning that. It's a reminder to us all of what's important. So even though we did motion, and I said yes, of course I wouldn't have wanted to motion for you to resign, because I think you've served us very well, and you've kept me on my toes, because even though we don't agree, I do appreciate the differences. That's always important, to have differences, because that makes you think. So I do appreciate that a lot. Thank you.
I'd like to say it's been a pleasure, and I really greatly appreciate your no-nonsense approach and just getting right to the heart of things. It helps move things along as well, and your desire to see action instead of just talk. Thank you.
I'd like to thank Joe Mulholland as well. I think we all know that this can be a difficult spot to be sitting, and we all take our turn at being the subject of criticism, and I think he's taken it with grace when it's been his turn. And you know, now that you're a resident instead of a commissioner sitting up here, I want to make sure you know, keep my number on speed dial, Joe, because I'm always interested in how you feel about things that we're doing here.
Commissioner, it's been a pleasure and an honor to serve with you, sir. Thank you. Would the commission be opposed to a short recess?
Great idea.
We will recess to 8:15 sharp. Thank you. You know, there was a moment there a couple days before the deadline where I'm not sure we're going to get anyone for District 4. For those of you who don't follow county politics much, statistically speaking, over 75% of all commission vacancies in Pinellas go uncontested. Nobody wants the job, right? And so for nothing else, I just want to say thank you for the 3 applicants who put their name in the hat and said, we're here, we're willing to step up, we're willing to serve. And so for that, you certainly have my thanks. So the next step for the commission is for us to deliberate and then make a motion to appoint. So. You got your green little thing? We'll take our turns and you say, or you make your comments, have questions, suggestions. Yes, Commissioner.
I'm using the green. I do want to thank the 3 candidates, and I do concur with the mayor. It's really, we ask, I know I ask, you know, the city clerk, you know, has anybody submitted an application, you know, so just because we want to know. Obviously, we don't want a seat to be empty indefinitely until November for the next election for District 4. So I appreciate all of you stepping up. I'm sure it was not a light decision to make, even though you might have been coerced by some of your neighbors. I know it's not a light decision to make. So, but with that, you know, one of the questions I had asked was, you know, what was one of the biggest priorities for District 4? And there are many, you know, and even for myself, being in a district that has a variety of different neighborhoods, all very different and unique as far as location and where they are. District 4 having 2 primary neighborhoods, if you want to call them that, being Paso Grill and Vina, and we kind of all discussed that. Paso Grill, you know, and it's not to say that someone living on Vina is unfamiliar with Paso Grill. You have to drive through there to get to Vina, right? But the situation in where they currently are and what they have to see on a daily basis might be different for someone who might have a little bit of respite, let's just call it, at Vina. Paso Grill is at a critical state. There's been loss of homes, loss of businesses, and you know, you see this all day. I see it in my neighborhood. I think one of the public comments was, you know, you've got maybe 80% of the homes not occupied around you, and that takes a toll on people who are actually living there as well. So I do think it's important to be close to where a lot is happening, but also know how to reach out, you know, to those who might not be close to where a lot is happening as well. So being part of a community is very important. And again, it's really hard because I hear what all 3 candidates say, and I'll say Bob since Joe opened up Bob, but Bob Shiros, right? You know, I do feel strong as a candidate because of your proximity and having the knowledge as a resident and business owner, your willingness to serve, having the time other than your potential cruise in September, but knowing that you are willing to step up and even take the November seat and go for election I think is important, because then we create again another empty seat. So because of that, I hold Bob as probably my first choice. Colonel, I watch you, you know, on the finance, you know, and I've seen you on beach stewardship. I looked at a lot of those before I went on beach stewardship. But you're serving that position well. So another one of my concerns is that we are now opening up another position. by moving you over. So unless you had someone, and I wish you would have said, and maybe I could have asked that, but it wouldn't have been fair to everybody. But if you had another candidate, though I know the mayor did appoint you on that seat. But that concerns me, and that knowing how many times we have meetings these evenings, which is a lot, and impromptu. I'm happy that we're not having one tomorrow night, but it wasn't planned for, and I don't know if it would be difficult as your role as a pilot, being able to look at your calendar as quickly as most of us, I think, have to look at our calendar while we're sitting up here trying to squeeze in another meeting. So that's my little brief summary, and I'll hear what the others have to say.
Yeah, it's very well said.
Thank you.
Colonel Greiger is a huge asset on that.
Absolutely.
On that committee.
Know the numbers.
Yeah, he knows his stuff for sure.
I'll go. Renee, how many letters did everybody put in? I mean, the petitions? 15 for everybody, or were there more on some, or what, or?
Some did produce more.
Okay.
I did not verify all of them. I just verified the necessary 15.
Okay. How many, did everybody put in 15, or was there 25 to some, more to others? I just don't know.
Yeah, one put in 15, one put in around 30, and one put in around 60.
Okay. I have concerns with just not knowing the comp plan, with a couple candidates not knowing the comp plan. That's a huge item that it's the Bible up here. It really is the Bible. And 2 of the candidates are going to run in November, so my suggestion is you really need to learn the comp plan, or read it, read through it, know the LDC, know the, the standards for review on the conditional use permits. It's a huge, it's a big stake for the residents here on what gets approved. It's a huge stake. And again, the residents pay 80% of the tax base here. So they are driving force. Not to say that the small businesses are the flavor of this town. And they deserve it too, but we have to respect and listen to the residents. They've been neglected for a long time. So I have concerns with not knowing the comp plan, and that's a huge issue for me. So with that being said, my choice is Mike Greiger. Simply based on that, he has more knowledge than the other 2. And they have time to learn it. They've got a few months here till November if they're going to run. It's an awesome opportunity. I think all 3 of you are great candidates for the job. Just the knowledge base is needed on that. It really is. It's the basis for most of what we do here. It's really kind of the basis for everything we do up here. So that is huge. The 25 years being here as well, that's another, it's got a lot of background. Everybody lives in the same district, so that to me is all the same. I like the feet on the grounds and knowing your neighbors. And you got to be able to take heat, because trust me, you'll get heat. Ask Joe, ask me. You'll take heat sitting up here, that's for sure. From people in the community and people outside of the community. So be prepared for that as well. But I would have to go with the person that is more experienced, and give the other 2 the opportunity to gain experience and to learn in the few months that we have till we get to November. That would be my recommendation.
So I think that we're very fortunate to have 3 super smart guys be interested in taking this position.
Absolutely.
There is no way to overstate how important it is to have people with a variety of backgrounds and experience sitting up here to help us make decisions, and to have a variety of experiences informing the decisions that we make. Listening to the 3 candidates, I think for me, the strongest candidate is Mr. Shiros. I think and there's a couple of reasons for that. Well, three reasons, really. The first one is that in the last 2 days, I've had a whole lot of people come by and see me and call me, expressing their support for him. So he does have real strong support from his neighbors, probably more than he knows, of people tracking me down to let me know that. And I also think that somebody with an engineering background and the thought processes of an engineer could be invaluable to us in a lot of the things that we're going to be working through in the next few months. So I think that's maybe I'm a little biased because I have an engineer for a dad, but I think it's a perspective that is very important that we've been missing. And then, you know, when he was here answering our questions, on every question that we asked about, you know, what's important in Pass a Grill, what's important to you, what's happening in Pass a Grill, he didn't just have theoretical answers. He had answers from clearly people on the street that he's been talking to specifically, personally, one-on-one. He's so tied to that community. It's very clear to me that he's very tied to that community and the people in the community, that it will be very easy for people to make their opinions known to him and for him to represent them because he's so accessible. And I think that's very important, and particularly when we're appointing somebody interim where there's not going to be a lot of time for people to get to know him or you know, figure out how to reach out to him and things like that. He's clearly already very well known and accessible. And so I think I think that would be a real benefit to the folks in Pass a Grill to have somebody stepping into this position who's already so responsive and accessible.
So we've heard from 3 candidates. Seems like 2 of you all for Mr. Shiros, and you seem to be leaning for Mr. Greiger. So from those of you leaning towards Mr. Shiros, the other 2 told us what they've been doing in the city, how they've been involved, how they've contributed, how they have listened to their neighbors, and how they've actually taken steps in action. So I'd like to just hear from y'all. I mean, convince me. I mean, what has he done? How has he taken the things that he's heard and then taken steps to remedy those issues?
Well, I think I heard him say that he was involved, and also looking at the resume and the association, the events going on in Pass a Grill. I mean, that's listening to people around, you know, and that benefit, some of the events they hold in Pass a Grill, it's not just for Pass a Grill. I mean, I know I've gone to 8th Street, you know, whenever there's an event, when they've had a bonfire, and even when I was president for the association, I felt comfortable, you know, calling over there to, you know, get ideas on how they run their association and what they do. So even though, you know, 2 have not served in a committee prior, I would say not all of us here did either, right? So I think we do that all in different ways, right? The involvement doesn't, there's always a first, right? This is my first as a commissioner. Yes, I was involved in other ways, you know, within my community, but involvement doesn't mean that you had to have, I don't know if you're asking about like boards and things like that.
I'll restate my question, right? So, for example, Mr. Maldonado, he heard there was a need. He stepped up and volunteered, right? I'm sure everybody else heard the same needs, right? We got seawalls, we got dunes, we got infrastructure, we've got roads. Colonel Mike Greiger picks up the phone and calls county commissioners, calls our federal senator. Okay, I'm asking for Mr. Shiros, what have you seen him actually take action? I'm happy that he listens to everyone. I want to know what actions has he taken. The other 2 gentlemen have taken actions and not in any official capacity. It's like, hey, I got some resources, I got time, I can volunteer, I can do this, I can make a phone call. I would like to know, because to me, you know, to say something as banal as talk is cheap, I want to know what your actions are. What have you done? How have you actually not just heard about the problem, how have you actually done something about the problem?
I think that it's different. I mean, again, he said he volunteered in different capacities within the community. He actually, and correct me if I'm wrong, because people did reach out to me too to support you as well, but you took on a general store that I think people in the community were very well aware of. Kind of, historic nature of Paso Grill is a big thing. I mean, we have a historic preservation board, right? And he took on a business which unfortunately got hurt, by the storm. But instead of demolishing it and putting something else, he tried to bring something back to the community. So to me, that's listening to community. It doesn't have to be on a board, I think that's action. So by running events for the community, not everybody does that. I would say the same, did the other two candidates help run, set up camp for the bonfire or the 8th Street lights, or just go to the event. I mean, volunteering is in many different aspects. So some people pick up the phone, and some people will set it up. It's just very different. So I wouldn't diminish either three, because their level of volunteering is just different in all capacities. I volunteer in 10 other things outside of the commission. I don't say that makes me better. We're all different. So I just still say that he's still volunteering.
I think people take action in different ways at different times when the opportunity presents itself and their position in life allows, right? I think, as Commissioner Resignation said, he's clearly volunteered a lot in the community, and absolutely, there's I like what you said. There are people who pick up the phone, and then there's people who pick up the tables, right? So they're both taking action, and so I think that I just don't think that's a significantly relevant question.
So you don't think the question of you heard about a problem in the community and how have you taken action is not relevant for somebody who wants to be a commissioner?
Especially after the hurricanes. It's been very important.
I don't think we asked any of them to give us a list of what problems did your neighbors bring to you and how did you take action.
The other ones all told us about it.
Yeah.
He had opportunities. He's telling us about how he's out there walking his dog and talking to his neighbors. I mean, they had opening statements, they had closing statements. We asked open-ended questions. We didn't restrict them to yes or no answers. I simply want to know, if you all feel so strongly about this individual, convince me, what has he done to be so deserving of your endorsement?
So what I am endorsing him based on my impression of who he is.
So you don't think his knowledge is important? You don't think his actions are important? You don't think his community involvement?
That's not at all what I said.
Okay.
So this conversation is about who do we support for this role, and who are we going to appoint for this role? And I think I've made that clear.
Well, I think this conversation should be about who's most qualified to be a commissioner, not who do we like the best. This is not a popularity contest. This is about who can step into in 2 weeks' time and fill this seat, not have to play catch-up, not have to be educated on what a CUP is, not have to be educated on the most basic things that our commission has to deal with, who doesn't have to be caught up on the last 5, 6, any number of years, right? It's our responsibility here to make the best decision for our residents, and that is to pick the most qualified person to be sitting up here and representing their district.
So you're going to base a decision because you felt that one person answered the CUP question better than another? I mean, again, it's not rocket science. Anybody here can pick up a document and read it and learn it, right?
And why haven't they?
That wasn't the question. Do you know every single ordinance that's in our city by memory, by heart? Or do you do research before you make a decision? Are you saying that his intelligence, and I'm not saying your intelligence, but in general, right? That the three candidates aren't intelligent enough to do the research when needed? I mean, many times I'm to the wee hours of the night researching to prepare for these meetings. And they're all different. We have different situations happening at all times. None of us are knowledgeable on all things. We have to be able to do the work, right? And so I think he's qualified and able to do the work that is needed to get the job done.
Based on what? What are you basing that on?
On the questions that we ask and listening to the people who came up and spoke. So I would ask you the same thing. What are you basing it on? Because you're asking me, but what do you have to say? What are you basing it on?
I got a different impression from, and I'm perfectly I'm perfectly happy, well, not happy, I'm perfectly willing, to say what I think. I don't think I've shied away from that at any point. And so to me, Mr. Shiros, whether you take offense or not, sir, you are, in my opinion, the least qualified of the three candidates that we have. And I'm happy to support that with your own comments. We'll give the gentleman a moment. So several times when asked why he wants to be involved, he said because he's bored. Sir, I am not bored. I got tons of things to do outside of being in the city, and I'm here because I want to serve my community, not because out of boredom. I think it's sad that, something as simple as, our tax basis, not knowing who's responsible. When you realize that the vast majority of our taxes are paid by residents, but you think it's actually somebody else. And so now you're not understanding who your constituents are, who you're here to represent. When he talked about, short-term rentals, he wasn't concerned about the short-term rentals, how that might impact the neighbors living to them. That's one of the things, for example, Commissioner Mulholland has been very vocal about is, the noise and how that impacts our residents. His concern was that it should not steal revenue from the hotels. Those were his words. Those are not my words, right? He hasn't been here. He hasn't been involved in any capacity at all. I know he tells us that he walks his dog, and I wish I wasn't allergic to dogs, and I would walk my dog as well and probably lose 20 pounds in the process, But that's my cross, right? And talking to your neighbors and hearing from them is one thing. But there's a difference to me between somebody who hears there's a problem, and whether you're on the board or not, because Mr. Maldonado is not on the board, right? But he saw a need, and he's not he's not hearing, he's about, let me do some action. I have some excess time, I have capacity. Maybe I don't know a whole lot about the permitting process, but I'm willing to learn so that I can help my neighbors, right? Versus, Mr. Shiros, when asked, why he wouldn't, serve in a board in the capacity, he said, well, he just wants to start at the top. Well, I'm sorry, sir, based on your answers, I think you should reconsider that and maybe actually get involved in some capacity and get a little bit of background, get a little bit of experience in the city to actually be able to serve in this capacity. And again, for us as the commissioners, our responsibility is to pick somebody who actually has the necessary experience and who's qualified, who's the best qualified person. And to me, those are the other two candidates, both on their professional experience, based on their involvement in the city. Mr. Maldonado did, was able to explain what a CUP process, what it is and what a process is. When asked about the LDC, he just frankly said no. He didn't try to come up with an answer. He just said, no, I don't know. And if nothing else, I certainly appreciate somebody who's honest and can say, look, I don't know. Too many people will just try to invent an answer and try to like do some word salad or so on. So I certainly appreciate that very much. And so that's why for me, again, looking at eliminating one person right off the bat, Mr. Shires, based on his own answers, based on his own lack of involvement, participation, experience, and so on, is certainly unqualified. And having been through this process before, we saw the results of what happened when we picked unqualified people, right? Both of you had experience. Both of you had served on boards, on the HOA or this community association, on beach stewardship, right? You had experience. You knew what it was like to serve in the city. There were 2 other commissioners appointed, one who couldn't even be here half the time, had zero experience, zero involvement, zero understanding of anything of the process, and we appointed him for District 4. And then we had another person that we appointed for District 2 who by his own admission said he wasn't qualified to be a commissioner. I asked him, and he says, yeah, you're right, I'm not qualified. And we had somebody else who had 30 years experience, and we picked that person. Okay? I think it is an opportunity for us to show our residents that we can make good decisions, that we can make decisions that don't seem to be influenced and motivated by something, because I really don't know anything about Mr. Shires. And nothing he has said today convinces me that he's able to step in here tomorrow and fill that vacancy. And we've made that mistake already, twice. And our residents have vehemently rebelled against it. And so if you all want to take that on again, but we have an opportunity to do it better this time than we did last time.
The residents deserve the most qualified person for the job. It's not a popularity contest. It's one who's most qualified for the job. It's a short stint. If the person wants to go on, that's fine. If the other folks want to run, it gives them an opportunity to learn the basics with the comp plan and with the land development code. It gives ample amount of time to get familiar. But what we need right now is somebody who can just step in for this time period. It's not a learning curve, and they can hit the ground running. And to me, that's the Colonel Mike Greiger.
So I think it's always a learning curve as commissioner, because unless you've been commissioner before, it's a learning curve. And I'm pretty sure when the mayor got elected, he had not ever served on a single board in the city or volunteered with any neighborhood association in the city. And so I think that's a little disingenuous now to throw that up as a required qualification for sitting in one of these seats. I do believe that, as the mayor has said many times, we have a responsibility to the residents in the city. And by far, I have heard from not a single resident about either of the other candidates, but I have heard from many of the residents who supported Mr. Shires. So numerous times, we've talked about voting the way our residents want us to versus our personal feelings.
So are you willing to go with the person who had the most resident feedback?
It is a part of what encourages me to support him.
Okay. Because Colonel Mike Greiger had 60 endorsements, and he's got 20-plus letters of reference in our package.
Household. Let's not even go there. Okay, many from the
So you
same
and your husband don't have differing opinions? You don't count as two people?
Okay,
No, I mean, that's what you just said.
all right.
So they don't-
I'm ready
their
for a
opinion
motion
doesn't-
If we want to go for a motion.
Is there a motion?
I motion to appoint Bob Skyros for Commissioner for District 4.
Second.
City Clerk, if you please do a roll call.
Commissioner Robinson?
No.
Commissioner Rosnicki?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Marriott?
Yes.
And Mayor Petrilla?
No. Motion fails. Okay, so we've talked about Mr. Shivers. Let's talk about the other two candidates. What are your objections or endorsements of the other candidates?
What are yours?
I already gave you mine. I talked about both candidates already. They've both been involved in the city. They're not talkers, they are doers. When it was time to take action because they heard from the neighbors, because there were problems in the community, they both stepped up and took action to help their neighbors, whether they were in an official capacity or not. I make a motion that we appoint John Maldonado. Motion dies for fail of the second.
I'll make a motion to appoint Mike Greiger.
I'll second. City Clerk, if you please do a roll call.
Commissioner Rosnicki?
No.
Vice Mayor Marriott?
No.
Commissioner Robinson?
Yes.
Mayor Petrilla?
Yes. Okay, so those of you that voted against Colonel Mike Greiger, would you care to let the public why you voted against him? What are your objections to him?
I already made my comment on it, so.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you speak
I have
about
At the very
Mr. Greiger.
beginning, the first time, my concern is the commitment of time having to be, we meet a lot, I'm constantly adding stuff to my calendar besides what's already listed on our calendar. So that's a concern of mine, and not knowing whether to run again for November. That's a big one. And also that we're going to be freeing up another seat on another board,
I don't think I actually see that as a benefit. That could
We're in the
help
middle of
those two
budget.
other gentlemen to fill that seat. I mean, that would be a great opportunity for them to kind of get their feet wet if they're going to run in November.
I travel a lot for a living too, and I still make the meetings. We do the survey as to availability, and there are choices in that. So I don't find that necessarily an issue, especially with our commission meetings are well planned out. I mean, they're planned out through December.
Not always. You know how many times I have to pull up my phone?
For regular
We don't
commission,
call to find out whether my employer allows me to or not.
regular commission meetings are scheduled.
We haven't had many.
Regular commission meetings?
We're here to.
Regular commission
tomorrow we're gonna
meetings.
meet.
I do it. I have to plan out, or I have to say no if it's on the schedule and I get asked to do work. I turn down work to be here. I lose money by being here. A lot. So I don't find that an issue. If you have the commitment to turn down work to be here to serve your city or your community, I don't find that an issue, if you're willing to do that. Actually, I find that more of a commitment than anything else.
Commissioner Marriott?
So I have similar concerns. I think that taking somebody off the Budget and Finance Committee in the middle of the budget season, then you're going to have somebody walking into the Budget and Finance Committee who's also has to get up to speed on arguably one of the most important things that happens here. And so I think that is a concern. I think that's a significant concern. You know, I still feel very strongly, and I've heard from a lot of people that Pass-A-Grill has problems that are different than people realize who live in Vina, and that is a significant issue, and it's a significant concern of a number of people that I've heard from who live in Pass-A-Grill.
So what did Mr. Greiger do when he heard there was a problem in Pass-A-Grill? He told us twice.
He called about beach nourishment that was already happening.
No, he called our federal senator, right, to get movement on that. And he also called our local county commissioner. I would prefer to have somebody on the commission, as we're dealing with a lot of things in the next couple of months that we have to deal with the county and the state and federal. I would rather have somebody on the commission that can pick up the phone and say, hey, what can we do here? Can you help some movement? You know, unfortunately, the other gentleman didn't even know what the tourist development tax was and where it goes, versus actually being able to pick up the phone and call the county commissioner and say, look, we need some help here with the tourist development tax.
But you also hope that the person's going to call the city first, right? He also said, and I hate to say it, in this, that the city manager wasn't going to get it done, so I went ahead and did it myself. You know, wouldn't you want the person to be contacting you first before going to a county commissioner?
Sure, and I did. And I used to try to work with the previous city manager.
No,
And
I'm asking another question. I'm
No,
saying
you asked about
if we want our constituents to come to us first, not have to go above us. right,
Absolutely.
to-
You would want
help
to.
the
And I
others.
stood there at this podium for a year, and I talked to a wall. And I got no results from the previous mayor and the previous city manager. And then you know what I did? I said, enough is enough. And I said, I can do a better job. And I got up and I voted.
The colonel came to you and he couldn't get it done, it had to go to somebody else in order to get it done?
He's talking 2 years ago, when there was
Then
no
you were
movement.
still the mayor.
When there was no movement with the previous city manager.
But you were the mayor.
I was, and I couldn't get anything done with him either. And that's why he's no longer here. We need somebody who actually has the ability to show some leadership, take action. And when, you know, if it's not working at the city because he's got somebody he can't work with and none of the commissioners are willing to do anything about it, you know, I applaud him for stepping up and saying, you know what, I need to worry about taking care of my neighbors. If that means I need to call my state senator, my county commissioner, my federal senator, well, good for him for having those relationships.
I appreciate anybody who uses their contacts in a positive way. That's not a bad thing. Regardless of who they're going, you know, not having to go through. Pick up the phone and call. That's the way you gotta be the squeaky wheel in this world. Get it done. And I like that attitude of somebody willing to just get it done. Just like with the volunteer program, stepping up and stepping into that. And learning, I'm sure there's a lot of learning going on there as well.
To his credit, Mr. Maldonado talked about the budget, he talked about the infrastructure, he talked about the needs. He referenced the December 10th meeting. He's been, you know, paying attention, watching commission meeting, and actually able to reference and talk about those intelligently and specifically. So with him already being somewhat up to speed, I actually wouldn't have any objection at all to appointing him to replace Mike Greiger. I think he would be a great candidate to put in, and then, you know, if he wants to run, maybe he can read the comprehensive plan and see what a CUP is in more detail. But, you know, I think he would be a great candidate to replace the colonel. give him an opportunity, and if he's, true to his word and he actually wants to serve the city in any capacity that he's able to and not just start at the top, then I would think that would be a great candidate. And so, sir, if I would ask you, would you be willing to serve in a capacity like that?
Absolutely, without a doubt.
Right.
Thank you, sir. So, how do we move forward? We cannot operate with 4 people until November, and so a decision has to be made. If we got to stay here until 3 o'clock in the morning, we're going to stay until 3 o'clock in the morning, but we got to make a decision on this. You will be out of town next commission meeting, as will I, which means we need 3 people for a quorum, which means if there's not 3 people here, there will be no quorum, there will be no meeting, and this is a budget meeting, which means we will delay our budget meeting by at least a week or 2. And that is not a good decision for our staff, not a good decision for our residents.
Now, Mayor, I didn't know you were going to be out, because when we did our calendar, I don't recall you saying you were going to be off for the next commission meeting. As a matter of fact, when I asked to move it, you said no, we already had enough quorum.
No, we never talked about moving it.
When we were talking about when we added the budget, the workshop, before I had mentioned at that meeting that I was going to be out, and you said it didn't matter.
We talked about this 2 weeks ago when Commissioner Mulholland decided he was going to resign.
No, I'm talking before, I think.
And I said at that point is we're not going to be able to operate with only 2 people.
Mm-hmm.
So the way I see it is you have one individual who's exceptionally qualified. He's been involved in the city. If we're going to take former Commissioner Rich Lorenzen, who was just here, he said, and God knows he and I have agreed on almost nothing ever, but he said you need a one person who goes around, knows all the issues, and does something about it. And it's only one person that's done that in Vina Del Mar and Paso Grill, out of the 3 candidates that we have. And then we have somebody who's got an exceptional career, who I would love to have at some point sitting on the commission and have a chat with the sheriff and some of the enforcement issues that we have and how we can get that going, but who would be a great candidate to step in, get his feet wet, start learning some of the nuances of how the city operates, and now we have somebody that, when it's time to run, somebody I could be comfortable saying, like, hey, here's somebody who knows what's going on in the city. They know the issues. They've been involved. They've been participating. He's been involved since day one, so for almost 6 or 7 months now. On top of that, with experience in budget and finance, that's great. So I think you can fill both positions, and I'm perfectly happy to nominate him, second we have a vacancy on finance and budget, if that were to happen. So I think we can clear both of those issues at one time and not skip a beat, because we'd have both of those meetings are in 2 weeks. And so we'd have both the commission and the board full.
So I will not be supporting Mr. Greiger to be appointed for this seat. If he chooses to run and wins, I will be perfectly willing to serve with him. I do not know him personally. My only impression of him, or the only thing I know about him, is numerous times when he has gotten himself embroiled in some social media discussions that I do not think are productive. And I think we already have enough incivility on this commission and I would prefer not to bring more of it onto the commission. And so I feel very strongly about that. And so you will not come up with a reason that will get me to agree to support him.
Okay. Commissioner Resnicki? Well, we have one person says they will never vote for Mr. Greiger. I've given you my reasons why I cannot support Mr. Shiros. So can your mind be swayed, or are we at an impasse?
I would say, you know, I did get a lot of calls, the same as Commissioner Marriott. No one, other than what we read on the resumes in our packet, that's all I received. You know, again, I think the Colonel, like I've already mentioned, I watch your meetings, I watched them before. You know, I might have sent you a message once, maybe twice, I can't remember, but I remember I did once, a month ago, I can't even remember, maybe you do. Again, I still feel everyone has a different, what we call involved with the city, is at different levels. So I do think, again, you know, that the Shiros did have the most. I mean, if people were casting ballots, he would have the most ballots. Whatever.
Not even close.
For me. I don't know the calls you received.
No,
right?
the public stuff that was received.
Right, but I'm talking about also things that are not documented.
So why are people not picking up the phone and telling all the commissioners?
I don't know. Maybe they feel comfortable. I don't know.
That doesn't,
I mean,
that doesn't answer the
asking me a
question. The question
redundant
is, are we at an impasse? Are you of the position, same as Commissioner Marriott, that there's nothing that could be said tonight that would sway you to vote for Colonel Greiger?
I would say the same to you. I mean, there's nothing there to sway you otherwise. I mean,
I made a motion for another individual, first of all, and then I'm happy to support Colonel Greiger as well. I'm looking at the three candidates. Using the candidates' own words, I explained to you why one person, in my opinion, is unqualified. If you all are perfectly happy to repeat the mistakes of the past and pick the least qualified person, then this is why we're having this conversation, because the public and the residents of St. Pete Beach need to hear it from you.
So I don't agree that he's the least qualified person. And I think that there are, you know, what are the qualifications for being commissioner, right? Well, in an election, the qualification is getting the most votes, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, any list that any of us would come up with of what we think are the qualifications is just that. It's just our opinion of what we think the qualifications are of being
So experience is not important?
I think that there's life experience is tremendously important.
So life experience trumps experience in the city?
Certainly.
Having commissioners.
We have a candidate sitting right here that's been on both the beach stewardship and the finance and budget, and I can't even believe we're even having this conversation. And we've got two other candidates that haven't been on either of those. And the one that's been on those knows the comp plan. Why are we even having this conversation? I really don't understand. And talk about incivility, you're sitting there saying you won't ever, and it seems like that is a little bit more than what you're making that out to be. So I just don't even understand why we're having the conversation. One candidate is clearly more experienced than the others.
Yeah. I would be more in favor for Mr. Maldonado to take the seat, and I'll tell you one other reason why I think it's important is to have more people involved in the city, right? I understand that you're volunteering now, you know, in the permitting volunteers, but I'm a proponent of getting more people involved, not just always the same, right? Colonel Gregor is serving a great position right now, a very important one that was left in the dust for a little while. You all know, we weren't even having workshops last year, and we passed the budget, you know. It's not an easy one either. Not everybody's a numbers person either, right? So I am more a proponent to getting more people involved. You know, so if anything, I wouldn't be shuffling positions. I would encourage to have someone new.
You know, I look at the candidates, and you know, much like in anything else, everyone comes and they try to tell you the most favorable version of the answer that they think you want to hear. You know? And they've all come forward and said, you know what? I'm willing to step up. I'm willing to serve. I'm willing to take action. I look at it and say, here's another opportunity for you. If this is about serving your community, this is about you stepping up and doing what's best for the residents of Paso Grill and Vina Del Mar. If you think there's somebody more qualified than you that deserves the job, maybe you remove yourself from the process. Help us make the decision easier. That, to me, what tells me a lot about the character of the individuals.
That they would quit the minute someone asks them to? I'm not sure.
You know, when I ran, people told me, you can't say that, you can't do that. And you know what I said? I'm going to tell people exactly what I think, exactly what I believe. And if they want to vote for that, they should. And if they don't believe what I believe, and if they don't believe in my ideas and ideals, then they shouldn't vote for me, because I don't deserve the job. And so, yes, if I was perfectly happy if I lost the race to say, you know what, clearly my message and what I wanted did not resonate with the people of St. Pete Beach, so why should I deserve the job? They have the same opportunity to say, you know what, I think somebody's more qualified. I think there's somebody who's better suited to serve the city than I am. If they don't believe that, then, you know, by all means, stay in it, right? If this is all about ego, just because you want to be in it, then great. If you think that you would serve the city better by stepping out of the race, then by all means. I've made this appeal before, and it's, you know, Nick didn't listen either. And look at where we are now. For those of you who know, Commissioner Feltz was appointed by this commission in December of 2 years ago. Zero experience, had never attended a commission meeting, had no participation, nothing. Voted for one of the most massive expansion projects in the city of St. Pete Beach, told us all about how he was going to be here for the long haul because his family's been here, and then the second the storm hit, he sold his house and moved. I want to serve with people that want to be here because they want to serve their community, because they want to contribute in some meaningful way, not because, you know, somebody said you've got to go and do it. Not because this is an ego trip. Somebody who said, you know what, whether I'm a commissioner or not, I'm actually going to take action for the betterment of my community. I'm going to pick up the phone. I'm going to go have that meeting. If the city manager doesn't answer my calls, I still got to go do something. I'm not going to let my community suffer just because we have somebody who doesn't want to answer their phone or respond to emails.
I will say it again. Mike Gregor is the more qualified of the candidates by being on the Beach Stewardship Committee, by being on the Budget and Finance and Budget Committee. He knows the comp plan. He knows what a CUP is. He understands the process. He knows who the largest revenue providers to our tax base are. He's not afraid to fill out Form 6. He's lived here for 25 years. I don't think he's going anywhere else. I didn't hear from anybody. I didn't receive a single phone call for anybody support. So it's amazing that only 2 commissioners received phone calls. I don't know if you did. I didn't receive one. I went by the letters that were given. And what I've seen. And we have a situation where we have the most qualified person and we have the next qualified person, in my opinion, ready to step up and take that other position, who has plenty of experience in finance. I don't even understand, again, why we're having this conversation, why this is going on this long.
So when you talk about qualifications, again, I think that we are all very capable of making our own list of our opinion of what makes someone qualified. And so that's what we're talking about, right, is our opinions of what makes someone most qualified for this job, that there is no set of prerequisites for. And so Mr. Shiros has been a small business owner in the community that he would be representing. He lives in the community that he's to be representing. When he was asked what the city's current greatest needs are, he said lack of maintenance and infrastructure. I think that's exactly what we've all been talking about for months, right? So he is very aware of the concerns and the problems that the city has. When asked what are the concerns facing District 4, he had very specific issues that were affecting the people in his district. He talked about parking. He talked about people wanting to maintain the historic character of the city. He talked about the need to balance the differing opinions of about his neighbors building new houses and his view of maybe having less impervious surface area, but needing to balance that with the property rights of people who are trying to build a new house and what they want. And so that shows an ability to have a nuanced view of what's happening in your neighborhood with your neighbors. And so I still think that combined with his engineering background makes him exceptionally qualified.
He talked about restricting people, not realizing he cannot restrict people. One, he can't do it on his own. It would require an ordinance. Second, the state of Florida is about to block us from even doing that. And if he'd been paying attention, he would know that.
City Attorney, could I ask you a question, just so that we know, because I know the mayor said that we have to make a decision, but what can we do?
Well, you could continue with 4 members. We have in the city a policy, a procedure for budget workshops, but they're not required by code or by statute. You could have the regular budget meetings. You would need 4 people if you were going to go from the rollback rate up to 110% of the rollback rate for your millage. So you would have to have 4 out of 4. To go over 110%, you would need a unanimous vote of the body, which I'd have to look, but you might need 5 people to go above 110% of the rollback rate. So you would probably be, the only difference I see is it may limit you in your millage rate setting to 110% of the rollback rate. And the rollback rate, the property appraiser does a taxable value, and then he finds out the rate it would be that would provide the same tax revenue as the previous year. So your rates could go up and down with the property valuations. That would be one impact. The other impact is if you have other controversial votes, you may have 2-2 ties a lot. If you have a 2-2 and something needs an affirmative vote to pass, then it fails. Like tonight. So if you have a 2-2, that motion failed, the next motion failed, so we don't have one. There is a section in the code for extraordinary vacancies in which it states that should 2 or more vacancies occur simultaneously on the commission, the remaining members shall, within 15 days, call a special election to fill the vacant commission positions. Such elections shall be held in a manner prescribed by the laws of Florida. Now, the supervisor of elections said they're not available to host an election for us, so we'd have to host our own election with city staff or contracted. And the supervisor of elections would have to certify the signatures of the voters, and we'd have to pay for those signatures. We'd have to try to do that, and that would have to be within 15 days.
But that's only for 2 or more vacancies.
Yeah. Theoretically, you could probably call for a special election saying that since one can't be appointed, or you could wait for this special election to come up and have the candidates between now and the date that we picked do their qualification to be a candidate on the election and continue with 4 until that election that the supervisor of election would run.
Okay.
Some more controversial items might not pass over the summer until that next election, and we have a determination. But you could try, and certainly each item would be considered separately, so it's hard to tell how the different votes would go, but you could certainly continue with 4 right now. You could extend the period of time to get additional applicants?
No, sir.
Bill?
That is not an option.
Okay.
And we talked about this. We're not changing the process because we don't get the people we like. We got the people we have. We've made this mistake before.
May I read something that just got emailed to me, a letter from a resident for support of a candidate, since it wasn't in this? May I do that?
Or if you send it to the clerk, you can ask the clerk to read it.
Okay, I'll send it to the clerk.
The letter should be going to the clerk.
As long as it's distributed to everyone, it becomes part of the public record.
Even if it's distributed to one of you, it's a public record.
Yeah. No, I'm saying for the meeting tonight.
Yeah, that's why we're emailing. If we email it to the clerk can read it, and then
But it
it'll be
can't
part of the video
It's not a
record.
current email though, right? It's
Yes,
not
it
a
is.
email just received right
Yes,
now?
yes.
Timestamp?
There's nothing
Yes.
that prohibits it,
We
but
can have
it's up to you
conversations
whether
with-
you want to or not. There's nothing that prohibits it, but it's up to you whether you want to allow that or not.
So this would be the first correspondence I've gotten personally supporting a candidate. Tell me when you get it, Renee. It's probably going through that.
Okay. This is from resident Layla Balmanis. The email states, Mike did a lot post-hurricanes for our community. He got supplies to neighbors who were unable to get to the supply drops. He doesn't just pick up the phone. Colonel Mike is boots on the ground.
Thank you.
If someone would make an additional motion, that's like the only option, I guess, for tonight. Otherwise, this item would fail, and we'd move on to the next item on the agenda.
I'll make a motion for Mike Greger Greiger, I think I keep mutilating his last name, so there you go.
I second.
Vice Mayor Marriott?
No.
Commissioner Robinson?
Yes.
Commissioner Rosnicki?
No.
Mayor Petrula?
Yes. Okay, so I think it's really important for the public to see, because we saw what happened at the last time we had a vacancy, and the public was ignored, and our residents were ignored. We had Commissioner Mulholland, who had overwhelming number of endorsements and votes from residents, to virtually none for Rich Lorenzen, who had zero experience, zero participation, had no involvement in the city at all. And the commission, because they wanted that candidate, in spite of having zero qualification, they picked him rather than the qualified person that you all praised so much tonight. And then they handpicked somebody else who had, again, zero experience, had attended zero commission meeting, participated in nothing, over somebody who had 30 years experience in the city, who's been intimately involved in the city and knows the land development code and the comprehensive plan inside and out. Well, they picked that person, again, in spite of what the residents wanted. And you all are doing the same thing again tonight. You have somebody who's got 60+ endorsements, another 20 letters. That's more than double of the next person. And instead, you would rather put the city in a position where business halts to a grind. So don't tell me you want to hear from your residents. Don't tell me that you represent them, that you hear them, because they've been telling us for years, loudly in emails, at the podium, through lawsuits, that they're tired of this behavior. And yet here you are, not representing your constituents.
That is completely incorrect. And
That is
you
100% correct. You're repeating the same mistakes of your predecessors.
So Commissioner Robinson had also not served on any boards prior to being on the commission.
I knew the comp plan. I know what a CUP is.
Those aren't the only things that we deal with on as commissioner.
Than you probably ever knew. I've been here for 32 years, Karen, and I've been active that whole time.
Great.
So don't...
I didn't say you weren't qualified. I said
you were
that...
heading down that path, weren't you?
No.
So you want to talk about incivility?
I was not heading down that path. I was saying that the mayor was setting up qualifications for what makes somebody qualified, that even you,
I'm looking at paper, what's on paper here, and what is. This is about hiring the best person for the job. If you want a popularity contest, that's going to be with a vote, and that will be in November.
But even if you won a popularity contest, you still have one candidate overwhelmingly supported by the residents. And again, we're not setting arbitrary. You would take something that a reasonable person would look at, and I would tell you that if our residents were sitting here and they had to choose between one person who's been in the city for 25 years, involved in multiple boards, who's volunteering, who's helping out, another person who's been in law enforcement, who's also contributed and volunteered, and another person who has zero involvement at all, hasn't been to a single commission meeting, you can't tell me that a single resident, other than the ones that like him, would show up and say, you know what, that's the guy. These are not arbitrary standards. These are standards a reasonable person would look at. And again, I want voters to know, because your terms are coming up in March. And I want people to know this is how you vote. This is how you treat the residents. You ignore them. You don't care. You're not here about I'm not sure who you're here to represent, but it certainly isn't the people of District 4 in this case, who overwhelmingly supported the colonel.
So I think I'm here to represent what I hear from people who call me regularly, who thank me for representing them, is it's the people who didn't vote for you. And so I understand that that can be frustrating for you, that the people who didn't vote for you have a voice. And so I'm sure that is very frustrating for you. But that doesn't mean that I don't represent anybody, or that I am capriciously making decisions on a whim.
You're making decisions that contradict what the residents of the city want, overwhelmingly.
No.
In fact, Rich Lorenzen, who was here as well, said it better than anybody else. I heard from 500 people against this, so I'm going to vote for it anyway. And that's exactly what you're doing.
You've spent a lot of time
hearing-
tonight talking
you're hearing-
about past commissioners and
Yes,
past
because we need
things
to learn
that
from
were
our
upsetting
mistakes and
to
not
you.
repeat them, and y'all are about to make the same mistakes again. You do not listen to your residents. They told you last time the way the process works, the way the whole thing was, the way that people were handpicked, that were unqualified, who didn't know anything about what's going on, who were not up to speed, who didn't know the first thing between the CUP and the cup and the sippy cup. And these are the people that were appointed. And you're about to want to make the same mistake, and you know what? I'm not going to let you, because I will not support him ever in this case. If he wants to run, good luck, sir. I'll come shake your hand. I'll give you some pointers. Happy to do it. But for today, unfortunately, and this is not a personal decision because I really don't know you. I genuinely don't. I mean, you could be the nicest person in the world, and I still wouldn't vote for you based on your qualifications because they are lacking, sir. They are. On the face value of them, they are lacking. I think it gives you a great opportunity to get some involvement in the next 6 months before the election.
I think you're frustrated because I'm not representing your views. And so you keep saying that I don't represent the residents or my residents, or, you know, I hear that from you a lot, and I guess all I can do is keep telling you that that's not accurate. And I do represent residents, and I do hear from residents, and I represent their views. I also think that it is not in the best interest of the city to move forward with 4 people on the commission. So I will make a motion to appoint Mr. Maldonado to the District 4 seat.
I second.
City Clerk, if you please do a roll call.
Commissioner Robinson?
Yes.
Commissioner Rosnicki?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Marriott?
Yes.
And Mayor Petrullo?
No.
Motion carries 3-1.
Thank you, City Clerk.
Mr. Mayor, would you like to swear in the new commissioner for District 4?
No, sir, we had to set that up for the next meeting.
Okay. I believe the next item is a resolution. Would you like me to read the resolution?
The next item is 5A, Resolution 2025-17, resolution authorizing a memorandum agreement with FDOT.
A resolution of the City Commission of the City of St. Pete Beach, Florida, authorizing a city designee to enter into the Florida Department of Transportation District 7 Highway Landscape Reimbursement and Maintenance Memorandum of Agreement and providing for an effective date.
Who's got it?
Sorry, Mayor, Public Services Director, Camden Mills.
Camden, please proceed.
Good evening. So this item before you for this resolution is an agreement between the city and the Florida Department of Transportation for landscape improvements along Gulf Boulevard. The stretch will be from 75th Street to the Bayway. So this is the landscaped medians in the Gulf Boulevard roadway. Currently, the city is responsible for maintenance of these landscaped islands. So what this ask is to replace some of the ground cover and help beautify and add some aesthetic features to those landscaped islands. Just to give you a timeline regarding this request, in May of 2024, we received a notice of funding opportunity from FDOT. On June of 24, the city responded to that notice of opportunity with an intent to apply. At that time, we were applying for the landscape improvements along Gulf Boulevard. Also, we were applying for along Blind Pass. On March 28th, of 2025, we were notified by FDOT that we were awarded for the Gulf Boulevard portion. The blind path portion was not awarded due to FDOT's planned resurfacing project. They thought the scope would conflict, so they recommended that we apply in a future year for the blind pass. On April 4th, we did submit a notice of intent to FDOT to accept that award. That's when they sent us over the agreement package, and that's what we have before you here today. So the total amount would be not to exceed $186,000, or $186,340. How this would work was the city would contract the work in accordance with the stipulations of the agreement, and then once that work is completed and inspected, we would submit for reimbursement for the state up to that amount.
Thank you, Camden. Commissioner?
Question, Camden, because you, and I know I asked the city manager this when we met, but just to verify, when you say up to the Bayway, does it also include the Bayway all the way up through the toll plaza, basically?
It does not include the Bayway up to the
Sorry,
toll.
Camden, I apologize. Commissioners, something just occurred to me that if we do not have a third person sworn in at the next commission meeting, there will not be a quorum. While this candidate is still here, or can we swear him in at the next meeting and
Just
then
so you know, I'm going to call in. I can call in, so.
you'd have to be, I'll be
Oh,
here,
physically
We have to have
not
three.
in person. You have to be physically
Yeah,
here.
we have to have 3 physically
So
present.
the question is, if he gets sworn in at the beginning of the meeting has to have a quorum to start. Or well, actually, no, the last couple were sworn in at the city clerk's office.
Right, exactly, before the meeting.
They can be sworn in at any time prior to
Okay.
the meeting. They can be sworn in at the start of the meeting if that's
Okay.
what.
We're good. The city clerk can swear them in anytime. The city clerk can swear them in
He
anytime.
might be coming back, he's coming back. We might as well just do it.
Okay. I just didn't want to leave that meeting in a position where we don't have a quorum, and
Let's
since
do it now so the public knows that it's happened and he's good to go. We can do it at the
we'll
end
finish,
of the
we'll finish
meeting.
this resolution and then, thank you, sir.
To answer your question, Commissioner, this does not include the portion of the Bayway up to the toll booth. This is just north of the Bayway, so that first landscape median immediately north of the Bayway
So
intersection.
then are we still, I remember when they approved, or how we got the money for initial landscaping on that portion. Is that then just city responsibility? Is that what FDOT left with us? Is that?
Correct.
That's ours, all the way through the swales and everything, that's city responsibility?
I believe so.
Okay, because it does have I mean, when you think of how many landscaping-wise, like the medians, that's the one that has the greatest amount of median, that we have the dead palm trees, we have all the areca palms that are along on that swale. I would say maybe about 45% of them are dead. So I know that would be, I guess, a budget item at some point, but I just wanted to know, because I know we were going to get a clarifying on that, whether it included it or not.
Thank you.
City Clerk, are there any public comments?
No,
on
there are
this
no
topic?
public comments.
Thank you. Any further items, discussions, questions for Camden? Thank you, sir. Appreciate you staying this late. Is there a motion?
I make a motion to adopt Resolution 2025-17.
Second.
City Clerk, if you'll please do a roll call.
Commissioner Isnicki,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Marriott,
Yes.
Commissioner Robinson,
Yes.
Mayor Petrillo.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, City Clerk. Next, we're going to proceed with swearing in Commissioner Maldonado to make sure that we have a quorum for the next meeting. Sir, would you step forward to the podium? I know this is rather sudden and unexpected, but we thank you for your indulgence.
Please raise your right arm. I state your name.
I, John Maldonado,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I am a full-time resident of the city of St. Pete Beach,
that I am a full-time resident of St. Pete Beach,
that I will support, protect, and defend
that I will support, protect, and defend
the Constitution and the government
the Constitution and the government
of the United States
of the United States
and of the state of Florida,
and of the state of Florida,
and that I am duly qualified to hold office
and that I am duly qualified to hold office
under the Constitution of the state,
under the Constitution of the state,
and that I will well and faithfully perform
and that I will well and faithfully perform
the duties of Commissioner
the duties of Commissioner
on which I am about to enter.
on which I am about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir. We will see you Tuesday, July 8th at 4:30 p.m. right here.
Looking forward to it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. All right, next we have items for discussion. Commissioner Marriott.
Yeah, so I wanted to see what everybody else thought. I think we've all received some of the same emails where people are struggling with some parts of our code when it comes to the realities of rebuilding after a hurricane. And so specifically what brought this to mind was a bunch of emails that, again, I believe we all received about a gentleman who has, more sheds than you're allowed to have in your backyard, but he has his stuff stored in them while he's trying to tear his house down and build a new one. And that our codes are our codes and they are the rules, and we can't ask or expect, nor should we want city staff to be just making by the seat of your pants decisions to make exceptions to the code, even when it's a situation that where you might want to, or it seems like the reasonable thing to do. And so, one method of dealing with this is to try to, be figuring out where these codes are that maybe we want to look at changing, and how do we change them to make things more reasonable. But, it occurred to me that there may be a batch of codes that could be addressed in situations of an emergency or the aftermath of something like a disaster like the hurricane, where maybe if on the books we had some sort of ordinance dealing with post-storm recovery that would make allowances for things like delays on landscaping and delays on some parts of bringing into compliance some properties for some parts of the code, in situations where the more important thing is for somebody to be able to get their house fixed or rebuilt and move back in. And so I didn't know if there was any, if anybody else had any thoughts about that, or any desire to pursue that line of thinking.
I think it's more than just that. I think we have procedures in place that we have found through this process the last 6 to 9 months, like the 20% overage for contractor profit. I mean, just because one of the, and this is, I had a conversation with the city manager earlier today, is one of the things I hear from residents and from their contractors a lot is, and this is like by the 20th, 30th time, it's like, no other city requires this.
Right.
And I think part of it is, so I'm glad we're doing some of it, but I think we need a deeper look at, okay, what are we doing because we've always done it this way, but there's no real purpose behind it, other than just to make life difficult for people. And is there a way for us to come in and start getting rid of some of those things, which would not only make it easier for our residents and their contractors, but also make it easier for our staff, for code enforcement, and for everybody else, because, the fewer, and again, it's not getting rid of good rules, it's just looking at it and saying, okay, why do we have this? Why did we start doing this in the first place? And the real answer is, unfortunately, for many of them, is like, that's just the way we've always done it. And there isn't a real rationale behind it other than that's just how it's always been. And we really need to start getting rid of some of that. And I think that would free up a lot of resources for both our staff and our residents as well.
Yep.
Commissioner Resignation.
Yeah, I'm in favor of doing something because, it depends who's looking, right? Like when code enforcement, let's say, goes by and saw that shed. When we are doing things already that are obvious, like, I'll give you an example, the RVs or campers on people's driveway. I am pretty sure there's an ordinance that doesn't allow people to park their RVs on property and live on them, right? And I'm not saying to go code enforce anybody, okay? I'm just saying it's a good example of that it doesn't match the situation, right? Because people are trying to repair their home, but we were okay to turn an eye on that one, right? And let people build their home. But we're focused on the shed where they might have their stuff, right, inside. And that became an issue, right? Like, there is an issue, you know, and how do we address it? I don't know. And I would even ask the city attorney, you know, being that you've been in other barrier islands and communities that have been hit with storms, do other communities have something in place for situations like that, where I would hate to call it turn the eye, but, you know, I like the post-storm.
Well, no, we had emergency ordinances where we said, okay, where it's a temporary, you know, so we did that for multiple things. We said, okay, it's a temporary 6-month, you know, ordinance, you know, or it's an emergency ordinance. I think
But if
you're
it's
talking about.
storm-related is what
Yeah,
I'm
I think
thinking,
you're
because it
talking
could
about
take
some of that,
more.
but I'm saying there's more than just that. I think there's some additional red tape that's in there
Yeah, there's
that
both,
needs to
yeah,
be
absolutely.
cleaned up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, and I'm hugely in favor of cleaning up the additional red tape, and I think that's an endeavor that needs to happen. I also know that the going on that could be slow, and so I definitely don't mean, you know, emergency ordinances instead of the cleanup that needs to happen in our code, or just the changing priorities that may have happened over the years, but that is there something that we can do that would give staff more flexibility or put the city in a better position where in the aftermath of a storm, we're not having to come up with a whole bunch of emergency ordinances to fix these things? Is there anything we can do proactively?
Yeah, we could put a trigger in an ordinance and put it in the code that says for a period of so many days after landfall of a hurricane or contact with this island where we had damage, you know, somehow define the trigger event, and then what people could do for the next X number of days, like put an RV in their driveway while they're repairing their home. And then I have a number of those RV ordinances from other jurisdictions. We could put that in so that it triggers. You know, the state statutes have now, and Senate Bill 180 has something that's a preemption on us that's triggered by the landfall and track of a storm. So we could say if we're within the track of a storm, then the following things can be done for the next number of days, and that way we don't have to adopt all these emergency ordinances. They're actually in the code already, and that would allow staff to do things like extend the period of time when they have to submit a landscaping plan, or allow for additional storage for a certain number of days. And we could pick numbers of days that make sense for each particular topic. That will give us a little bit of leeway to get started, hit the ground running without having to have a commission meeting to adopt an emergency ordinance and then go through the ordinance first and second reading. You'll remember we were doing that every meeting. We had so many. So we have these now, and then as we've gone through this process and we've heard from citizens, we've learned things we want to change about the code. So we could put some of that together.
Yeah.
City manager, does that give you some direction?
Yeah, so we'll talk and come back with some proposals on maybe a blanket. I was even going to say maybe some things turn administrative.
If I remember correctly, are we not doing a, what do we call it, an efficiency or a process study for permitting?
We have business analysts looking at that process right now and trying to.
So was that part of what they're going to be doing, is looking at our process to make sure it's as efficient as possible with the resources that we have?
Yes.
Okay. So some of that is already happening, but I see what you're saying about a separate ordinance, and that's something that the city attorney could then work on.
Mm-hmm. I get together with Brandon and Camden and others that worked on the emergency ordinances.
Yep. Okay. Next we have reports. City clerk.
Just want to announce that the qualifying period for the November 4th special election is now open. The qualifying will close on July 7th at noon, and any interested parties can come to the city clerk's office and review the materials.
Thank you, City Clerk. City Manager.
No report.
All right, City Attorney.
Just a couple updates on some legislation. One, House Bill 784, preempting city commissions from hearing plats and replats and requiring that they be approved administratively, was signed by the governor yesterday. And today, the governor signed a good bill, Senate Bill 1622, that repealed and rescinded the statute that set forth the onerous customary use doctrine preemption process. It required us as the city to sue our own landowners and beachfront owners in order to establish customary use. That was repealed and rescinded in one line in Senate Bill 1622, repealing that entire statute. So we go back to the prior customary use doctrine, the common law doctrine that applies, and we can take a look now back at our own beaches and customary use areas and report back to you in the future on that. And there's a couple other bills we'll put together, bill summary and potential impacts on the city, and distribute those memos.
So for the customary use, is there anything that we should be looking at as far as a city ordinance, or is that something that should go into the beach ordinance as that's being reviewed, or?
That's something we're looking at. We had apparently a customary use ordinance, and it was rescinded by the city council as part of a settlement agreement, where we're going to review the settlement agreement and see what language is in there. But I think we can possibly do something in our code to memorialize, or at least to acknowledge, the common law of customary use.
Okay. Thank you, sir. District 3.
Just a couple updates for the community. At Lazarillo Park, there will be holding a social cheer event, just a chat event. This is on July 17th at 5:30. And then there will be a Don Cesar Property Owners Corporation general membership meeting on August 14th. And that's at 6:30 at Lazarillo Park as well.
Thank you. District 2.
Not much to report, other than I do have library hours Tuesday, July 1st, 5 to 5:45.
District 1.
Yes, so make sure everyone has on your calendar that July 18th to the 21st is the grand reopening of the Beach Theater, which is very exciting. So the Beach Theater on Corey Avenue will be reopening in late July. You can go to their website, and there's already movie tickets available for the summer. It's fantastic. So that's good news. In District 1, there's more people moving back into their houses every day. I think we might be sneaking up on, probably 25, maybe even 30% of people back in their houses, which is really great. We have unfortunately had a few issues with some unoccupied houses being broken into. So make sure you watch out for your neighbors. If you're in the neighborhood, keep an eye out. Call the sheriff. The sheriff is fantastic at responding and investigating. So watch out for your neighbors. And that's it.
Thank you. Actually, I was going to ask you if you'd be opposed to me attending the Big C tomorrow. The city manager, who's not doing a career change, would like to have a presentation to the Big C about beach maintenance and working with the county. Would you mind explaining it in more detail? And so I've prepped some of the mayors that our city manager will be there just to kind of coordinate some of these efforts with him and hopefully take some couple $1 million off our budget.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So one of the ideas we wanted to explore with the Big C mayors was whether or not there was interest in collaborating together to submit a memo or request to the county commissioners and the taxing board that monitors the bed tax to invoke a provision of the current resolution that provides actual wording that says that the bed tax can pay for beach maintenance. And while historically the county has taken a position that that's for capital improvement projects only, we believe a case could be made that a compelling case could be made by all the beach communities to request that the county help with the ongoing beach maintenance, given that it has a direct impact on tourism. And we think we can make a strong argument. That I'll just be pitching the idea to see if they're interested, and then get the information from each beach community on what they spend per year in beach maintenance. At St. Pete Beach, we spend almost $1 million in ad valorem tax to pay for that. And those are for the public beach maintenance areas. And so we thought it was the most compelling nexus to begin the conversation with the county and the taxing board.
Does that include any of the walkovers for the at the public beaches, like Pass a Grill and Upham?
I believe the regular maintenance of those, yes. When they get destroyed, no. Those become capital projects, which we could put on the capital list, but that would come under that umbrella, we believe, in our requests. We would be asking for some assistance.
Okay.
Yeah, so you said you're available to go?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would be skipping the PSTA meeting, but I think it's a worthwhile project to explore. You know, I think if we all came together with all the 11 beach cities, you know, the county collects almost $100 million in bed tax. And some of that would be nice if it came back, since they use that money to advertise, you know, St. Pete, Clearwater beaches. And we're the second largest tax contributor for the bed tax. It would be nice if they help pitch in some of that beach maintenance that they advertise as having here. So, and looking at our budgetary deficits, you know, I think that could go a long way for some other capital improvements, and God knows we certainly have plenty.
Yeah, well, and thanks to the city manager for being the first person who's actually come up with a plausible way to get some more of those dollars.
We'll see how the county goes.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
But at least it's a solid attempt.
And I'm going to count on Mike to make that phone call, whether he's on the commission or not.
There we go.
So with that, we are adjourned.